All right, we'll call the January 10th, 2023 meeting to order at 9:01. Okay. We'll go to the agenda. Any additions to the agenda? Start with Aaron.
No additions today, sir.
Okay.
No additions. Thanks.
Okay, Roy.
I have one item. It's to do with the right of way, our right of way, and placement of power lines. That's the only item.
Okay, thank you.
7-2.
That's committee of the whole.
7-3. Oh, okay.
Take that in committee of the whole, or do we do it in?
Put that as 6:11.
6-11.
Okay, 611 power lines placement. Okay, I don't have any. Does administration have any?
Yeah, Deputy Reeve, we've got one that we would like to position in the agenda after item 6.1, and it has to do with the acquisition of a tractor. And just as information, the report dealing with item 6.7 will be handed out, is being handed out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it for your additions. All right, we can get somebody to approve the agenda as amended or changed or whatever. Roy?
I move that Lamont County Council adopt the January 10th, 2023 regular council meeting agenda as amended.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Okay, next is minutes 3.1, page 6.
Vote.
Oh, sorry. A vote. All in favor? Okay,
Aye.
carried 4. The next one is adoption of the minutes 3.1, page 6 to 15. Find any errors? All right, can we get a motion? I don't think so. They can't hear?
Not well enough.
Which mic can't they hear? Do they?
Or all of them.
Or all of them?
It's turned all the way up, so if efforts can be made to use your mics well.
Okay, the adoption of the minutes. Aaron?
I make a motion that Lamont County Council adopted December 13th, 2022 regular council minutes as presented.
Okay, all in favor? Carried 4. Okay, then we're gonna start this morning with a delegation. We got it on the screen here. McClellan delegation. We got 15 minutes to present, and then we'll have a little discussion after, if that's fine. Oh, if she's still on there, we lost you. Okay.
Oh no, she's
okay.
on there.
She's on there. Okay.
Ms. McLaughlin has asked that we show this presentation.
Okay, good. Are you ready to go? Can you hear us?
Yes, can you see my PowerPoint presentation right now?
Yeah, it was up on the screen. Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, you're ready whenever you want to start.
Loser.
Did we lose you?
No.
No? Hi, can you hear us, Rachel?
she's there.
Just bear with us for a second. We can't.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. We can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Can folks online see my PowerPoint presentation as well?
Yes.
The people online can see it,
Super, super duper. Okay,
presentation.
all right.
There's
hello.
double checking here.
Sure, thank you so much for your patience.
It's okay. It's online also.
Okay. I'll just get started then. Hello. Thanks so much for taking the time to hear me
Just one
today.
second, if I can interrupt. We're having trouble hearing you. Just if you can talk a little louder, please. Just so.
How about now?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, my name is Rachel McLaughlin, and I'm here to discuss me and my husband Dan's experience with Lamont County as it relates to a county-owned right-of-way adjacent to the south end of our property. I'm going to be reviewing the history today of the right-of-way, overviewing Lamont County's communication timeline, my concerns about this experience, and communicate my request to the council. There's simply not enough time to cover the entire history and all my concerns. However, I encourage council members to review the emails between the county and myself, which I had provided to Legislative Services Officer, and to follow up with me for any additional information about the topics I've touched on today. So I'm going to start at the beginning. On July 1st, 2021, Dan and I took possession of a quarter section along Range Road 147, which formerly belonged to Curtis Thoreau and Sheila Bueller Thoreau. During the transaction process, there was the option to purchase a provincial grazing lease from the seller for 30 grand. We declined as it was unclear how we would be able to access the landlocked lease. Also, in our purchase contract, the seller warranted that property improvements like fencing and corrals were not on any right-of-ways and complied with municipal legislation. It was over a year later that the county informed us that improvements warranted in our contract were actually on the right-of-way. Several months later, on October 14th, 2021, we noticed surveying activity by the right-of-way and our property. Despite contacting Lamont County and others, we were unable to determine who ordered the surveying and for what purpose. Over 7 months later, in May 2022, there was more activity near the right-of-way, so I contacted the Lamont County Peace Officer, Officer Wright, for the first time on May 5th, 2022, to inquire about it. Officer Wright shared that the activity may be related to an unresolved provincial grazing lease matter, that government representatives were trying to determine a course of action for the right-of-way and the grazing lease, and that he was the primary contact for this issue. On June 12th, my husband and I entered into a grazing lease with a third party that encompassed most of our fence quarter section. On July 14th, Curtis Thoreau approached us when we were on our property. The interaction was one-sided and involved several statements from Mr. Thoreau. He said that he would be using his right-of-way to move cattle to his grazing lease, and that my husband and I would have to pay for clearing the right-of-way and have to build a fence between the right-of-way and our property. This was the first and only time we interacted with Mr. Thoreau, and at no time did we make any agreements with him. We followed up with Officer Wright, seeking clarity about Mr. Thoreau's statements and for a right-of-way update. No new information was provided, except that our fence line were within the county's right-of-way. There was no indication that we were required to address this matter. On August 18th, we first learned of concrete plans for the right-of-way when Officer Wright sent us an email stating that Mr. Thoreau has a plan to start fencing the undeveloped right-of-way soon. The email also said to keep our cattle off the right-of-way and that existing portions of our fence within the right-of-way may be removed. That same day, I sent an email to Councillor Warwa expressing concerns about Lamont County's handling of this matter and requested a county-led meeting to discuss right-of-way plans. A few days later, Mr. Chanaski, the CAO, replied to my letter stating that Mr. Thoreau would erect a fence along the property line of the right-of-way and our property, and that the county would not stop him from doing this. None of my concerns or requests were addressed, and I was told to continue corresponding with Officer Wright. Between August 25th and September 23rd, there was back and forth between Officer Wright and ourselves about containing our cattle, and I reported an incident of trespassing. Ultimately, we terminated the grazing lease prematurely, and we have no plans to have livestock on our property next year. I also requested a county-led meeting about the right-of-way during this time, which was not acknowledged. On October 6th, we received an email from Officer Wright informing us that Mr. Thoreau's fence installation would begin 2 days later. He also reminded us to contain our cattle, which were no longer on the property at this point, and that we were required to remove a corral belonging to our property off the right-of-way. While the fencing had previously been mentioned, this was the first time the county had brought up the corral. On October 15th, I replied to Officer Wright's email asking for clarity about their request, and I restated my many frustrations. To date, I have not received a response and no fence has been installed. After I exhausted my options in obtaining information from the county, I submitted a request to access information that was received on October 21st. I was quoted $756 to fulfill the request, so I submitted a fee waiver request with supporting rationale and documentation in November, which the county refused a few days later. So my main takeaways from the timeline here is that beyond that grazing lease I mentioned, at no time have my husband or I provided approvals or permissions or have entered into any agreements. This includes agreements or arrangements with the county or private citizens regarding the use of our property, removal of our infrastructure, or building and installing fencing. We have communicated this to the county numerous times, and yet the county has communicated to us that they were aware of and supported Mr. Thoreau's plans to install a fence along the property boundary lines, and that this would happen in the fall of 2022. This means that the government endorsed a plan to install a fence partially on the right-of-way and our property. My correspondence with Lamont County demonstrates that I have made numerous and constant requests for right-of-way information, including approvals, plans, justification, and potential impacts and risks of the right-of-way situation. Lamont County's apparent unwillingness to fulfill or even acknowledge my very direct request means that I've been unsuccessful in learning any meaningful details about this endeavor beyond the ones I just listed. I cannot provide any information or ask any questions about the right-of-way because I am uninformed about the issue. However, based on my experience with the county, I can speak about my concerns regarding Lamont County's governance and communication approach as it relates to the right-of-way. We understand that Lamont County has the authority to operate within spheres of jurisdiction that allow to make and enforce certain decisions, even if the public disagrees. However, most democratic institutions, such as municipal governments, have certain obligations to the public, which are met by striving to achieve good governance. So throughout this experience, I believe that the county failed to implement several commonly agreed upon principles of good governance. I will focus on the county's failure to implement transparency, accountability, participation, and rule of law. Lamont County is publicly committed in its current strategic plan that they will implement the closely connected principles of transparency, accountability, and participation. Specifically, Goal 3 states that the county will utilize public engagement, including facilitating public input, to achieve transparency and accountability. In practice, the county implementing these commitments would start with making a decision, like the decision to allow an individual to alter and use a right-of-way for specific purposes, and begin public engagement processes to communicate this decision. The second step of this process would be to make the decision transparent, meaning information and data would be publicly available and easily accessible to those whom a decision might impact. Despite my best efforts, every attempt I made to garner information about county decisions and plans involving the right-of-way have not been honored or have been obstructed. I initiated most of the communication with the county. I even tried obtaining information that should have been made publicly available through an access to information request. Still, I was quoted a cost-prohibitive fee to fulfill it. Plans, developments, and decisions about the right-of-way remain shrouded in mystery. Transparency is fundamental to achieving accountability, but providing information is not enough. Public engagement activities that support accountability require that governments are responsive, assume responsibility, explain their decision and actions, and acknowledge citizen demands. There has been a lack of responsiveness and acknowledgement to my consistent demands for information. Most of my questions and requests have not been acknowledged or addressed by the county. There's also several indicators that the county has relinquished its responsibilities as the landowner. For example, a county representative offered us unrequested the contact number of Mr. Thoreau so we could discuss the right-of-way matter and details with him directly. There's also been little explanation provided for county decisions or actions involving the right-of-way. Justification such as reference to permits, formal permissions, policies, council decisions, or legislations has not been provided or referenced. Additionally, answers to my liability, environmental, safety, and maintenance questions have never been produced. And as part of this process, according to the county, would be to facilitate public input about a decision. Public engagement exists on a spectrum, with the depth and breadth of engagement typically correlating with a decision's impact on a group. Under the county's public participation policy in Goal 3, we might have expected to have been consulted and provided opportunities for input as county decision-making directly impacted us. The county could have then factored this input into its right-of-way decisions. However, this is the first opportunity I've been afforded to voice my thoughts to receptive county representatives, and because of the lack of transparency and accountability, I cannot provide any meaningful input about the right-of-way at this time. As well, during my experience with Lamont County, there were several instances when the local government failed to implement or adhere to the rule of law. The rule of law means that all persons and organizations are accountable to the same clear, publicized, and equally enforced laws. Therefore, governments must demonstrate procedural and legal transparency. As I mentioned, the county indicated that they were aware of and supported Mr. Thoreau's plans for the right-of-way. However, the previously mentioned lack of transparency and accountability means that there is no evidence the county has followed proper process or procedure for allowing right-of-way use, alterations, or expropriation of private property. This casts significant doubt that this endeavor adheres to any legal requirements. Another part of rule of law requires that governments enforce the law equally. The county informed us that improvements belonging to our property were encroaching on the right-of-way and that they would and need to be removed. And yet we were also informed Mr. Thoreau was planning to install a fence that would partially rest on the county's right-of-way. One set of rule applied to us and another to Mr. Thoreau, as he had endorsement from county employees to install a fence on county property. Adhering to the rule of law also means recognizing the supremacy of the law. There were several instances when Lamont County did not appear to adhere to the law, particularly when they supported the installation of a fence that would rest on portions of our property. My husband and I have not permitted anyone to conduct activities or install infrastructure on our property, and we have communicated this several times to the county. Lamont County appears to have actively supported an infringement of our private property rights. Additionally, the county's repeated failure to voluntarily provide the information I requested and failure to adhere to their administrative responsibilities outlined in the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act when I submitted my access to information request obstructed our ability to protect ourselves from this private property rights violation. I cannot stress enough the seriousness of the county's actions in this regard. And there's serious consequences when governments fail to implement good governance principles. It results in ineffective government, reputational risk to the organization, increased involvement and administration from oversight bodies, and litigation. So I do have some requests to council to help resolve some of these issues. I am asking that Lamont County implement the principles of transparency, accountability, participation, and rule of law immediately and in all future endeavors. For this specific situation, I believe the county needs to make a definitive and timely decision about the future of the right-of-way that is transparent, justifiable, and incorporates the views of and is shared with all impacted parties. Additionally, I recognize that our improvements encroaching on the right-of-way will likely necessitate continued communication with the county. We have attempted to be collaborative and cooperative, but our ability to amicably address this issue is only possible if the county implements the principles I just identified. And there are some larger issues that extend beyond the right-of-way. Specifically, ensuring transparency, accountability, and adherence to rule of law are fundamental to preventing government corruption. I would like a review or an investigation of the county's conduct and decision-making discrepancies about this right-of-way endeavor, and that is shared with all impacted parties. This review should probably include what steps will be taken to prevent future incidents from happening, like the one I just described to you. And periodic reviews should be common practice in all county projects and programs. And I also have a few considerations for council today as well. If the Lamont County is serious about good governance, achieving its strategic goals, and adhering to its public participation policy, I believe additional resourcing for public communication endeavors is required. Expecting a peace officer alone to meet the robust and complex communication needs of this situation is inappropriate for a variety of reasons. Lastly, Lamont County may not have the organizational knowledge required to handle these matters adequately. I ask that the county look to external supports and organizations who may be able to cover gaps in expertise and provide training to staff so that the county can handle the diverse and complex needs of its citizens adequately. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody have any questions for? Roy?
My question is, so since the last delegation on this issue, what is that steps is administration taking on this matter since the last delegation? I just forget what date that was.
I think we had 2 in November and December.
Mr. Chair, as response. We have the final delegation, which I believe is this one, before developing a report as requested by council on this matter.
Yes, we had a delegation, I think, in November, and then another one in December. Now this one, took the other one's information until we had everybody's delegations done. Any more questions for?
So what more did you need, Peter?
I was awaiting this third delegation prior to responding to council's direction to provide a report.
And that's what we were waiting on at the last one. We took it as,
Okay,
we'll wait for the January delegation and then combine all the 3 delegations and.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the delegation. What is your objection to the undeveloped road allowance being fenced? Just that directly. What is your objection to the undeveloped road allowance being fenced?
I don't necessarily have one, but what I do object to is that we were told by county that a fence would go on the property boundary lines, which is on the right of way and then partially on our property. And we were not consulted in any meaningful way. Actually, we weren't consulted at all about this. And I also believe there's several pieces of legislation then come into play.
I believe that landowners quite regularly fence their property. And what we authorized Mr. Thoreau to do was to fence the undeveloped road allowance. Lamont County itself did not require the undeveloped road allowance to be fenced. However, in order to allow for Mr. Thoreau to utilize his grazing lease and to be able to provide access for cattle, we authorized him to put up a fence. Not understanding the issue.
Did we authorize him to go on our property or on?
We cannot authorize somebody to put a fence on somebody else's property.
Okay, but the communication that I received from Lamont County stated it would go on the property boundary lines. In an email
Okay,
from
it'll be
Mr.
1 inch on our
Tarnetsky.
property. Is that better? And I'm trying not to sound
So
smart, but if
my
it's 1 inch on,
Okay.
I think you're unduly interpreting words. If we need to
Well,
engage
if
lawyers to
I
write
ha- if
letters
I
on
have-
every matter, it's going to be very
if-
costly.
if I have misinterpreted something, my other challenge is every time I ask for clarity or communication, I was not provided any. So perhaps I misinterpreted, but I am only going off the information that has been presented to me. My point in this presentation currently is that it's very challenging for me to present opinions on a right of way when I have not had an opportunity to learn about the issue thoroughly from the county. So hypothetically, if you are saying Mr. Thoreau installs a fence on the county right of way, it was mentioned at a previous delegation that this would not be permitted. So again, I'm seeing some discrepancies here. As well, we are being asked by the county, and it is their right that to remove certain encroachments from the right of way, and yet another individual appears to be given permission to install improvements. So again, it seems to be some discrepancies here in the county's handling of the situation.
Mr. Chair, I think the difference that we're seeing here is that in one instance, a private fence was encroaching on the county right of way. In another instance, someone was authorized to put up a fence. I'm not certain what words to use, but to delineate the boundary.
Okay, the fences should be on the property lines is where they should be, right? With 66-foot right away open, but with that right away open, that's the only way you can access your property, right? Is through that 66-foot right away.
Road, yeah.
No,
Okay,
nope.
so if we got a wet spring or whatever, then there's that whatever. There's a heart. You won't make it to your property.
Mr. Chair, the other thing I'd like to reinforce is that all communications with Mr. Thoreau, and to the extent that I recall, communications with Ms. McLaughlin have indicated that we are not providing any kind of exclusive use for that undeveloped road allowance. And to the extent that there was a gate anywhere, it could not be locked. So where Ms. McLaughlin was encouraged to contact Mr. Thoreau to make any arrangements, that would have been the opportunity to address any kind of an access point within that road right of way, rather than doing it in a public council meeting.
Okay. Any more questions for Rachel or administration? Okay, Roy, go ahead.
So how far is the corral into the county right of way?
It rests like right within it. And I'm not arguing that. And we're happy to work with council if it needs to be, Lamont County, if it needs to be removed.
Because there is a difference having a fence on the property line, you know, on the center of the property line, but having a corral in the right of way is kind of a different story.
And again, I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is there appears to be kind of two different standards here.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
When you purchased your land, was there a real property report done to show surveyed, like, survey stakes and pegs?
No, there was not.
Okay. So Mr. Thoreau has indicated that he wants to put the fence up. He indicated to us that it would be him that impacts the full financial cost of this. Has he approached you for financial assistance on putting up the fence?
He did on July 14th. Yes.
So, and then, but of nothing as of then, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Sorry, that's all I have for questions.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Any more?
Mr. Chair, while Mr. Thoreau doesn't have standing here today, maybe he could just nod his head. So there was a survey done, but the survey stakes are no longer there? They are there. Very good.
Okay, thanks. All right, if there's no more questions and stuff, we'll take all this as information along with November and December. And we're gonna have to get administration to, and council will have to get this sorted out and see what we gotta do here. Okay,
I think
So-
we want to receive this information motion.
take this one and we'll add it with
After
the
the second one. Yeah. Good.
November. Yeah, we'll take all three delegations and,
I have a
Okay.
problem with this.
okay, go ahead, Roy, or sorry, Dan.
You know, we listened to all three. We have a he said, she said. How do you decipher which is right and which is wrong?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, all I'll be able to do is relate back to council a summary of the delegations. My belief continues to be that at its core, we have many, many miles of undeveloped road allowance. We have no intention of fencing them. Where someone is willing to come forward and fence it at their cost in order to gain or maintain access to a grazing lease, I see no reason why the county would stand in the way. The communication with the neighbors was responsive rather than proactive. There may be an opportunity to improve there. However, I don't think it changes the situation in terms of it's somebody who was prepared to do this. Don't know why we would object to somebody fencing a boundary and providing access to their grazing lease without providing exclusive access. And attempts were made to ensure that the neighbors could communicate with the landowner putting up the fence to arrange for appropriate access to the extent it's necessary. I did not hear that there was actually an objection to the fence going up. just to the process. So once again, there may be an opportunity for us to be proactive on this sort of a situation. Although again, we have many, many miles of undeveloped road allowance. Ms. McLaughlin may be correct in suggesting that we either need to engage additional resources or engage external resources if we were to attempt to undertake this kind of proactive communication on every such matter.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you for delegation. We'll have to take it as information and combine the three delegations and get administration to come up with a report for us and see what we can do here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your delegation. Thanks. Thank you. All right, we'll get somebody to make a motion. Take this as information, please. We got
We have that scheduled after all delegations to take them all as information as one motion.
okay, so take all three delegations as one. Okay, so we'll need a motion, take all three delegations.
Well, that's the next one. Next one.
Oh, after, okay.
After,
We've got
yes.
two more in the
Okay.
RCP,
Okay.
then we'll take it.
Okay. We'll do it after the RCP. Okay, we got one more delegation. We'll do it after the
Yeah.
RCP. Okay, thank you. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Better not be. Better not, because I do my own.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, just slide another.
Oh, yeah, it's not quite the flow beat or anything like that.
For the record, Dan did it.
Yeah.
We'll just wait for a minute to get Peter back. And
Where do you go?
okay, you had to let him in. All right. Okay, Peter's back. All right, we got. We'll carry on with 4.2, the next delegation to RCMP from Fort Saskatchewan, Two Hills, and Vega Road Detachment. Maybe we'll introduce council to you guys in case you don't know who we are. We'll start on the far left there.
Hello, I'm Aaron Wick. I'm the Division 2 counselor for be the southwest corner of the county.
Dan Warwa, Division 1, the far east and south of Mundare.
Ryan Aka, Division 4 counselor from the Andrew area. That's the northeast corner of the county.
Neil Weddis, Division 5, basically 2 miles east of Lamont, north to the river, up to County of Strathcona is my division.
And we have one counselor missing.
And one counselor, we got the Reeve, Dave Deduke. He's on the north, kind of the central, north central part of the county. Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, so get some feedback.
Yeah, it's echo.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll get used to it.
Yeah, it echoes.
Yeah, the voice in my head.
Yeah.
Worse for this morning. So I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Inspector Barry LaRock. I'm the officer in charge, detachment commander of Fort Saskatchewan Detachment. And I've been there now for 6 months. I got there in June of 2022. And so I run the detachment there. So
I'm Terry Hagan, the Staff Sergeant from Saskatchewan Detachment and the Operations Commander, so I run. Robert Daisley, Two Hills Detachment Commander.
Okay, thanks, guys.
So today, and I believe you have the package from Fort Saskatchewan was sent out. We're looking at Q2 of 2022, which is June, July, and August of last year. I know that seems dated, and we're coming out with our Q3 package here fairly quickly. It'll probably be the first part of February when it comes out. It gets prepared by our operational strategy branch in our K Division headquarters. That then is released to me. I send it out to you. And so that's the package that you have in front of you. I also have some different numbers from the last 4 months of last year that we can talk about in some generalities, but they're not part of the package. It's just some numbers that I pulled yesterday just for some more general interest and some timelier things since we've had a delay from the end of our Q2 submission. So in the letter, you can see that one of the things that the RCMP are endeavoring to do is our body worn cameras. So there's going to be some pilots set up in the province to see how that works out. A lot of logistics to that. It's not so much the putting the camera on, it is everything else behind with regards to storage of the data, disclosing of the data, how do we keep data integrity. So a lot of those things are being worked out. So the pilots will give us some indication of how that's going to work. I believe it is an evolution that is in policing that's coming to the RCMP. On both the parts of the police officers, in addition to our clients that we serve. Because if they know that they're being recorded, I'm going to suggest that some of the behaviors that we generally get may be tempered to a lesser level, because they'll know that it's not just two people or one people and another having an argument on the side of the road.
He said, she said.
He said, she said, they said, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So in the letter, that's kind of the highlight there. With regards to the statistics on, it says Fort Saskatchewan Provincial Detachment Crime Stats Actual Q2 2018 to 2022. So gentlemen, if you have that. 2022, we did see some increases, primarily in the property crime. You look down, the break and enters went up, the theft of motor vehicles went up, theft under went up. So if you look at the bottom, total property, we've got 128 files over 2021 for a 36% increase. We are seeing a lot more people out and about committing crime in terms of the property stuff. What we're starting to see is that it's not just in the middle of the night type crime. Getting some brazen vehicle thefts during the daylight hours. We actually had one yesterday just outside that ended up, we got the guy, but it was brazen at I think 8 o'clock in the morning. On him and going from there. So starting to see a little bit more brazenness to some of these. The other thing we're seeing the latter part of 2022 is the release procedures from the courts. The courts have made an active decision that they don't want to see people incarcerated prior to their trials. So a lot of people are getting released on bail. And we're seeing some of the property crime people, we had a female that it was her third time where she was stealing catalytic converters, that we finally had a justice of the peace hold that person. And so the previous 2 times when we took the person in front of the justice of the peace for the judicial interim release, they released her on no cash or cognizance. And then, so again, sometimes we're chasing the same people, and we find that the people responsible for the property crime, it's a pretty small group of people that are doing it. I'm quite surprised in our detachment when all of a sudden something happens and our members are saying, oh, that's probably Johnny, or that's Edith, or whoever, right? We've got a pretty decent handle on the people that are doing it because it's such a small group. But if we're chasing the same people all the time, so that's one of the issues that comes up. But we did have a significant thing with property crime. We are trying to do more patrols. I'll talk a little bit about some of our numbers, but we did have an increase in property in that quarter. And I can tell you that from the other numbers from the last 4 months, the month of October, we had a significant increase in property crime, and our analyst was looking at it, and what it was, some of the people that we had dealt with earlier in the year got out of jail. Right, so we're starting to see a pretty, it's not a direct correlation, but we're starting to see a pretty significant correlation between people getting out of jail and going right back. So the recidivism is still there. The rest of the stats, and I'll probably just defer to asking some questions going from there. Our entry MVCs are also up 11 to 5.
Yeah.
So again, people and their driving habits. And I always like to say, drive as if the police car was following you.
Yep.
Unfortunately, when the police car is not following you, a lot of people's driving behaviors change. I'll jump over to the reporting part in terms of the RCMP provincial policing report. So that just highlights some of the formalized meetings that we have with the different councils. One of the things I will bring your attention to on the September 22nd, we had a town hall in Lamont County, and we probably had between 35 and 40 people attend. And what we're talking about is just kind of, listen, we're open, tell us the stories, we've got big shoulders, we can take it. In addition to asking people, what are the priorities? What would you like to see the police? What's important to you? One of the things we see in the media now with, you know what, the RCMP are so big and needs to be disbanded and what have you, they're saying all our priorities come out of Ottawa. Well, I can tell you from an on-the-ground commander is we're always in our community saying, listen, tell us what is your issues. Can we deal with everything? Absolutely not, but we're there listening. It was a good event because some things came out, some misunderstandings with regards to what they thought the police could do were cleared up. We did have some sidebar conversations with some of the people in the group about specific things to their community. Again, people just want to be safe. That's ultimately what it is. A little bit some toneism came with regards to some vigilantism, right? About, oh, if someone's on my property, I can do this. And so again, we tried to temper that. As we've seen in the past, some people have gotten in, it's kind of like the instigator rule in hockey, right? It's not necessarily the first guy that gets thrown in the penalty box, it's the guy that comes in third. Right. So again, it's trying to temper that. I can appreciate though, people who live in the country, they want to feel safe in the country as well. So we do try and make consistent visits, both formally and informally. If you go to community priorities, one of the things we do, we have an annual performance plan, and I think I've mentioned it before. This is on page 3 of 6. This is what we set our priorities for the year. One of the things that we're going to be doing is in the months of February and March is we're going to be getting out to hopefully some community events and trying to setting up some town halls to have people say, what's important to you? What do you want your police to be working on? Right? And to build these things. So the priority 1, road safety, police visibility, prolific offenders, domestic violence, and then employee wellness are the 5 priorities that we have. So we do different things throughout the year, and the reporting is shown there. When the priorities were developed last year, I think we were very Fort Saskatchewan centric, and I want to change that. I want to get out into the rural area and say, okay, what's important, and then look at our initiatives and our metrics and say, how can we demonstrate that we're doing the job that we're paid to do in terms of trying to keep the community safe.
Commander, can I ask, was there a consensus between what you heard, open house, and these community priorities?
For the most part, there was. Yeah, these are pretty standard things, and ultimately the visibility is a big one. We want to see the police, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about proactive patrols and things of that sort. And I've talked at many things about, you know, we can drive down one range road and 10 minutes later the criminals can come back and do it. But again, it's giving people the sense that their police are out there. Like today when we rolled through town, or when Terry and I came into town, we did a quick roll by the schools. We did a quick roll by some of the senior homes and by the hospital. And again, we're doing nothing than showing your police are here. and we're here when you need us, but we're also here when we are just kind of rolling around. So we're trying to clean some things up and become more efficient. The last one, priority 5, the employee wellness and respect. That's working in-house. We have a lot of people that are on ODS, off-duty sick. And so what we're trying to do is take some steps to make our people a bit more resilient, a bit more mentally healthy. So those are things that we're doing. I can say this, that Fort Saskatchewan detachment for the first time in I think 15 or 17 years, I'm not exactly sure the number, had a Christmas party this year. And so it was kind of a culmination of a few months of trying to change that culture and get people together. We had a good time, and it's showing that our culture, our small C culture, is changing within our detachment to being more resilient and enjoying the people that we work with.
If I can say, your vacancies are very low.
Yeah, it's we're actually going to have an issue here quite soon when we have some people off on paternity leave. We're going to have a little bit of a juggling effect that's going to have to take place.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. There's no doubt. I talked to our staffing people, and we're in a pretty good position to moving forward. So the crime statistics are pretty straightforward, and I mentioned that the page before. We now have an analyst. We had an analyst before. She went to another position. We have another analyst now. I'm very big on analytics and metrics to tell us where to go. So we're looking at different things to figure out where best to put our resources, because we don't have infinite resources that we're trying to. So we've got to use them as efficiently as possible. So I think I've explained before, we work on a post concept where we have 41 total positions in the detachment. 33 of those are paid for by the city of Fort Saskatchewan, 8 are paid by the province. But we operate on the post concept. So depending upon the night, there could be city members, but they will go out to the calls in the rural area as well. So that's what the post concept is. And we are, staffing is good. We had a tough summer last year. We really had a tough summer between our vacancies, because we had people coming in on transfers, our people at ODS. We expended a lot of overtime to meet our minimums. Our service delivery didn't fall off in terms of our calls for service, but our proactive stuff certainly did fall off. Our traffic enforcement, our proactive patrols fell off. It stabilized in the fall, and now it's actually pretty decent where our watches are filled, our GIS is filled as well. That's all I have in terms of our report to present to council, and I'll hand it over. And do you want to do questions first or hand it over? Peter, I'll leave it up to you.
Yep,
It's the chair. You guys got any questions for Saskatchewan here? That one yesterday morning, was that a repeat person with the pickup?
No, it wasn't a repeat for us.
Okay.
But it was someone that's known, right? There's a history in our records management system of this person. So.
Okay, I'm just curious. So.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions for Saskatchewan? Okay, 2 L's.
Assuming this is going on a recording, so I'll try to speak to the mic. Yeah, so I'm not going to go through my report in detail because it is kind of dated, and it has very similar information to the one from Fort Saskatchewan. So crime was up last year over the year before, which was down from the year before that. So 2020 was high, 2022 was high, and 2021 was lower. Why is that? Well, probably COVID plays a factor, and probably COVID money played a factor as well. With the COVID dollars being out there, there was less incentive for criminals to be out robbing your house to get a meth. I'm not sure what the Fort Saskatchewan experience is, but in Two Hills, all the property crime, everybody that we arrest for property crime is addicted to methamphetamine. And so that's really the main driver of property crime in our area. And it's a huge challenge to deal with these people. We have I guess I'd call it an informal policy within the detachment of offering treatment to every single person that we arrest. And again, like we had a similar situation last night where we have this guy, he's using crack cocaine and he's an alcoholic and he's got schizophrenia. Also, he's tearing up his parents' house and he's going places he's not supposed to be. So we can go there and we can arrest him and take him away, but it doesn't change any of the underlying problems that this person has. So Zach did a really good job of offering him treatment and working with the person that we brought up, like the person whose house we brought him to. That person was also sort of encouraging him to go and get some treatment, and we're going to follow up with him. So we're trying to do some of that. I would say that unfortunately, we don't see a ton of success. We've had a couple of people go to treatment. One of them is back working in the community and has a job, and she went for alcohol treatment. With the methamphetamine, unfortunately, most of these people seem to die rather than get clean. But that's the main driver of crime in our area. In terms of priorities, priority offenders, prolific offenders, same frustrations as Fort Saskatchewan and every other detachment in Alberta, and I'm sure probably the rest of the country as well. There were some changes made to the laws, and so that's part of the reason why the courts are releasing everybody. Is we kind of had a situation before where if you had money, then you could get out of jail, and if you didn't have money, you stayed in jail. And so the federal government kind of said, like, well, it's not really fair for poor people to have to stay in jail and wait for a year for their trial. So maybe we should just let them out, and that's the fair thing to do. And noble intentions, but also has unintended consequences. And so I have seen an improvement in the amount of time it takes to get people to have a trial. So if we catch somebody stealing a truck yesterday, right, they could probably have a trial within 6 months, no problem. Whereas, 15 years ago, it might take 2 years for them to have that trial. So there have been some big improvements there, but I think there's still a ways to go. And until that happens, I think it would be hard to hold people in custody. So if your offense is stealing a truck, is it fair to make that person stay in jail for 6 months until their trial comes up? Well, they're probably only going to get sentenced to 90 days for stealing the truck, so it's probably not really fair to make them stay in jail for 6 months. But I anticipate that the courts are going to continue to try to shorten the time that it takes. We have seen a couple examples where we've had trials set on what we would call short notice, but actually it's the way that things should be, right? And so as long as we have these simple cases, right? Somebody goes out, steals a truck, you catch them. We don't need to do any forensic analysis. We don't need to send things away to be done. We don't need to call in experts. We just have the police officers show up there and say this is what happened. So with simple cases like that, I expect that it'll probably become shorter and shorter time frames, and we'll have an easier time to get those people in front of the courts, have them sentenced, and go to jail for the things they've been caught for. Yeah, our biggest focus in the Two Hills area is on those priority offenders, and so we're trying to make sure that we're doing proactive patrols around. We have one main guy, and he's kind of to the east of Two Hills now. He used to live out in Lamont County, and he moved closer to Two Hills, so it's kind of convenient for us. And it's also good for Lamont County because he's doing less crime out there and more in Two Hills County. So yeah, we're trying to make sure we're staying on top of him. We've done 4 search warrants on this guy now in the time that I've been in Two Hills, and we're always looking for that information to do the 5th one because we know that there's stuff going on. So.
How many officers do you have?
5. So there's a sergeant and 4 constables. No, that's been the same. So we got a second public servant at the detachment. So that has been nice because she takes care of some of the court packages and some of the administrative stuff that the members were doing. So that's relieved a bit of the burden on the members. So they're able to be out a little bit more often. But yeah, no extra members so far.
You have very long.
We have kind of a long, thin area. So we cover from the highway that goes to Heinsberg, east of Highway 41. So it's about 40 miles from Two Hills to the east end of our area and about 40 miles from Two Hills to the west end of our area. And then it kind of varies in thickness because chunk of the east corner of Two Hills County. And then we have like a narrow area, kind of comes, and then it gets fatter over or 540 up to. Most of our calls do tend to be in the east end of the area, so we do go murder them occasionally, and we're paying some special attention to that guy that's side there. But most of our calls are out here, so yeah. doing a lot
You're
of
up to
driving.
540 to the south?
Yeah, I think it kind of
550.
varies a little bit depending on where you are. So like south of Two Hills, straight south of Two Hills on Highway 36, we go down to 532 or something, just north of 631, and then it kind of zigzags up as you go towards the west. So
Are the RCMP detachment boundaries are on the map in front of you, delineated in a orange color.
Alrighty. Anybody have any more questions, Aaron?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do they have a differentiation between the amount of time used in rural or urban? Like, we grew up, we were always RCMP and then the GRC is gravel road cop. So we're just wondering how many of the people actually like patrol for rural. That's what we're kind of wondering, if there's a set amount of hours or kilometers they got to put on down back roads or.
Yeah, so we don't have a set number of hours or kilometers that we do.
Okay.
When our numbers are short, our proactive patrols is what suffers,
Okay.
right? So that we don't come up. We have some members, a couple members. So we have one specific here that is assigned to the schools, and quite candidly enjoys coming out to the rural area and is quite a traffic enforced. Traffic likes to enforce traffic laws, and we're starting to get more people expanding out. Right, when our call volumes are down in Fort Saskatchewan, because that's where the bulk of the calls come. But what we're starting to see now is we're not getting as much call volume, specifically since about November. So we're trying to chase our members out of the office and out onto the roads.
Cool.
The post-law concept. We have operations strategy branch with K Division, and they quite tirelessly measure city through that are assigned to the province, and that's based on a specific number. We also recognize that there's remember state, for example, we have in Chittenden, we have in Lamont. You know, with the schools, now making concerted efforts to be out here. As Barry mentioned, there's some members that just want to be out in the country. The question comes up.
Terry, could you pick up that handheld mic? The people in remote world aren't hearing you.
Okay, so for traffic,
It should be on.
Sherwood Park covers part of Lamont. Like for.
We have capital.
I think it's on just closer.
We have Capital Traffic East, which is based out of Sherwood Park, and they come right up to the south area of Fort Saskatchewan, and they do come right into Strathcona as county as well, and they work right through to the other side of Vegreville.
Yeah, up to Vermilion, I think.
Yeah.
About halfway between Vegreville and.
Yeah, I meet one quite often.
We see them in the area quite often, so.
Yeah, so they're based, so it's a provincial traffic unit that's actually housed out of Sherwood Park.
Yeah.
But they'll come and use whatever attachment depending upon what, if they end up getting impaired or something like that, then they'll just use the detachment that's closest to, say, bring a person to the instrument if in fact.
No, the young fellow that's that's in this area now, his dad owned the bakery here in town, eh?
He grew up with
So we all know him.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's good to know.
Yeah.
Dad knows them better than you.
Yeah. They seem to have a connection there somehow.
One of the things I will say in terms of of resourcing is I know that the 8 positions attached to Fort Saskatchewan from the provincial side, and then obviously the 5, there hasn't been a whole lot of change in that. There has been additional positions added, and K Division is trying to create some different units to augment what the frontline policing is. The 3 of us can go to the province and the government officials and say, hey, listen, you probably need some more police officers. We probably don't get looked at with as much respect as if it would be coming from people like yourself,
The county.
going back through. And I know the whole RCMP, Alberta Police Service thing is on so I'm not sure if a bunch of positions are going to be forthcoming. But I urge you guys as a council to keep pushing the MLAs and saying, hey, listen, we haven't seen an increase in establishment for a long time. You look at some of the building that's going to be coming along Highway 15 and what that's going to bring to the county. And I think it takes time. It takes time for the province to pony up the cash. In addition to, it takes time actually getting a body in a position. So if you think that there should be more members assigned to the rural collator or the rural contract, please reach out as a council and get that going now, because it could take 2 or 3 years by the time things go through. And I have yet seen anyone say we need fewer police officers.
No.
So anyways, just a little advocacy from our detachment, and certainly from Two Hills.
The sad part is you catch somebody in there home barbecuing before you got the paperwork done.
Mhm.
You're working overtime and they're already having a beer.
Yeah. So.
That is actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that we've been working on addressing a little bit. We met with our chief crown prosecutor last week and had these similar discussions. I mean, there's certain things that are within our control, and we certainly can't, determine whether or not the justice is going to be releasing these offenders. However, we can do what we can to make sure that our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. We had a really good meeting with our chief crown last week, and of course, she, it's not lost on her that we continue to see these offenders released again, but we were able to discuss and determine certain things that we can do as far as articulation to the justice, and how we're documenting things and the paperwork, and ensuring that they're aware of all the circumstances, the background that the client has, and make sure that they're well educated before they're going into these hearings. At one point in time, we were very much involved in the judicial interim releases, those hearings, but now our input is limited. So we just need to make sure that we're doing things properly up front, and that was one thing that we identified and we're working towards. So from our end, we'll do the best we can to make sure that that's relieved.
Perfect. All right, yeah, anybody else got any more questions? Okay, well, any comments?
Yeah, the one thing that, so Barry briefly touched on it, we're going to be starting the community consultations here for this coming year for the priorities. So I just urge council to think about that over the next maybe month or so that we can get some feedback of what are your priorities for the coming year. And then that feedback will be taken into account with all the other consultations done at each of the detachments, and then each detachment will come up with a list of priorities based on that. So.
Roy's got a question.
There's still 2 members that live in Andrew.
Yeah, we've got 2 members living in Andrew, and so that highway between Andrew and Two Hills, probably as much police attention as any in the province.
Yeah, that's a positive
It's not
thing.
more.
Yeah, there's always a presence there. So
Yeah. So for a little town like Andrew to have 2 police officers living there, I think it's a big benefit, and that's the reason why we've kept the housing there, is because we want to have those members in the community and being able to sort of. It's really nice when you get an alarm in the middle of the night and you can just call up one of the members and say, hey, zing over there and see what's going on, right? So it's a big benefit, I think.
Yeah, that is.
Right, well, thank you guys for coming in and the job you're doing.
Yeah.
It's probably a thankless job, but we appreciate it, so.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
guys.
And that dome, that's part of our interrogation
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, echo chamber.
Yeah.
I think Maxwell Smart had one. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break, 10:10.
We are live.
Roy made come back.
I move that Lamont County Council revert back to the January 10th, 2023 regular council meeting at 10:40.
Okay, all in favor? Yep, carried. All right, and then we got a motion from the in-camera. Okay, Aaron?
Sure. I make a motion that Lamont County Council approve the purchase of demonstrator Kubota M7-152D tractor as reflected in the request for decision for the amount which is under the amount budgeted in the 2023 capital equipment budget.
Okay, all in favor? Carried, all four. All right, now we go to, thanks, Terry. 6.2, Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. Members at large appointment, page 71 to 73.
Mr. Chair, this item is also quite straightforward. We have appointed people to the Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. Previously, we currently have 7 members. We are allowed a maximum of 12. We believed 7 was adequate. We had somebody make application to become part of the board. By coincidence, the report says earlier this year, let's correct that to say in late 2022, we had difficulty assembling a quorum to hear an appeal. So the recommendation is to appoint Barry Stewart as a member at large of the ISDAB for a term expiring December 31, 2025. And we have some summary information on his background on page 73. So again, under normal circumstances, I thought we were okay having 7 members, but given that we had difficulty putting together a panel of 3, we're recommending that council appoint 1 more.
The Lamont County Council appoint Barry Stewart as a member at large for the ISDAB, a term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, 6.3, Annual Road Inspection Policy, 5137.22, page 74 to 78.
Very good. Mr. Dietz is here to address this item. You may recall that we addressed this in an earlier committee of the whole. So again, this approval should be somewhat straightforward.
So as council reviewed this policy back in November, the annual road inspection policy, we've made a few updates to it, but the policy outlines that annually Public Works will organize a road bus tour for mid-October in consultation with councillors and appropriate staff, put together a list of roads to be inspected by council, Public Works staff, the CAO, and appropriate other management and administration. If there's no further changes, we're looking for council to adopt this policy today as amended.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. We'll get Roy to do the motion, please.
I move that Lamont County Council approve policy 5137.22 annual road inspection.
Okay, all in favor? All four carried. Okay, 6.4, request for approach southeast 5516 west of the 4th, 879 to 85.
Mr. Chair, I'll launch it and ask for Mr. Dietz to fill any details. I was requested by a ratepayer to undertake this item. He claims that, with intense frustration, he claims that he had submitted an application in 2018, 2019 timeframe for an additional approach, that he had meetings with public works directors, and that a work order had even been prepared. The administration has no record of the application, no record of any fee or payment. Complicating factor is that our level of service has changed. In 2018-19, he may have reasonably expected Lamont County to undertake this additional approach at the county's cost. Based on direction from council, additional approaches are now subject to an inspection fee of $350, as well as a $350 deposit refundable upon acceptance of the approach built by a third party. Normally, I would have expected for the resident to either request the delegation, or more likely to provide a letter for correspondence that council could respond to. This resident was not inclined to do that. So in order to help dispense with this matter, I've written this RFD for council's consideration.
That deposit again, I thought that was on new acreages and stuff, the $3,500 deposit once the approach is made. And is that for a regular?
So the $3,500 deposit is it's not a refundable deposit. We hold the check, and then within 6 months, when the approach is built and constructed, then we return the check. So we don't actually deposit it.
More of a security, yeah.
For new subdivisions, the development does take a deposit.
Any opinions or questions, guys? There's no go ahead. There's no records of him applying for it or anything. There's nothing.
That's correct. And I have not named the resident because it's not really germane. I imagine that if he had made a delegation or written correspondence, his name would have appeared. But
I have one resident the same thing, eh? Kind of.
Might be the same one.
Could be, but no, the land location is not the same, eh? And
That's in your division?
yeah. So I don't know if you,
I have not talked to
this
resident.
that's,
There was no record of anything in the.
well, because you know what? That's the way things were done. It was in that book. Okay?
Where's the book?
Got it. Not your names, but you know who was in charge of that time, eh? There was a lot of those. There'll probably be more driveways coming up for you yet, hey, on the same.
Oh, that's what we had before we drew the line at
I know.
the cutoff date. It was different if there was my opinion, different if there was paperwork.
Yeah.
Something that he came in.
And Mr. Chair, you'll notice in the report it said council did authorize a couple of lagging approaches, but in those instances the resident was able to produce a copy of a prior application.
So on on here, it just says the southeast of 5516. It does not encompass, or it doesn't approach onto 855, right? It doesn't give an actual quarter, so we don't need to know that, but just as long as it doesn't go onto the highway.
He'd have to get a permit for the
550,
government
no, 550, that's the correction line.
correction line.
Well, no, like land location is,
Yeah, on
5516.
on Township Road, 550,
oh, right.
okay?
Yeah.
Was there a, there was an application?
According to the landowner, he had discussed this with the Public Works Director at the time,
Yeah.
but our records have no formal application, no work order created, no paperwork
Because
whatsoever.
there was a lot of them like that, eh?
Well, that's why we changed the policy and stuff.
I know that,
Yeah.
but that's. See, because at one time we never charged for widening or a new driveway, say.
So, Mr. Chair, I should note, I understood that there would only be 4 members of council here today. That's why I want to ensure council understands the recommendation is written in the positive. The intent is for it to be defeated, to stay consistent with policy. Because if it's written in the negative and defeated, then it's unclear what the decision was. So if you're wondering why it's written the way it is.
Okay, so to defeat it, we'll read we'll read it to put it on the board, and then if everybody votes no against it, then
If that's council's intention, yes.
intention. Right, any more questions? Comments? No? Okay, if we put the motion on the board and then nobody votes yes, we vote no, then it'll be defeated, so. Somebody wants to do it that way?
But it's. Is that the one?
I'm sorry, I've just noticed there's an error in this motion. It should say contrary to policy, not contrary to bylaw.
There's one number missing. It's a section number.
550.
That's a township. Southeast what?
There's one digit missing. Southeast 11, 2, 4,
Let me see if
6.
I can
Oh.
find it. That may well be an oversight on my part.
That's why I was asking.
Range Road 160.
Pardon?
Range Road 160.
I know, but the southeast of 11, 12, or 13,
55,
southeast of
that's
1,
the wrong number.
it's not,
This map is small and I can't see anything,
Yeah.
but I can look there and there's one digit missing, one set of numbers. Like what's the section
So
number?
you said range. Road
55,
16.
southeast of 11 or southeast of 12, or
yeah.
there's southeast of something missing.
Apologies, this is the number that the landowner gave me.
There's a digit missing.
We table it.
If you'd like to table it, we could find out the other digit.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
think.
yeah, well, come back to it, table it for now.
It
So-
would
so-
be southeast of 1.
Southeast of 1.
Okay,
Thank you, Darby.
Yeah.
That should be- Should there be a dash before that one, Darby?
A space.
Just space one, I guess.
Right on the correction line. And he's got 2 driveways there.
two big ones already.
Yeah.
On moving.
Is that to that piece where
There you go.
the culvert or something cut something off?
No. See this? Can we go into camera?
If you'd like.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, just 1 second.
okay, the request to go into camera. Can somebody
What section is that?
put us in the camera on, it would be for number, what would that be?
Yeah, number 24.
Number 24. Okay, who wants to put us, Roy, put us in camera.
I move that Lamont County Council move into a closed session at 10:56 a.m. pursuant to Division 2, Section 24 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Okay, all in favor? Everybody's in favor? Kill.
I forgot to turn the recording on. The motion was there.
Okay, the motion was made by Aaron and all in favor, so for the recording. Okay, 5-1 rural addressing bylaw 859.23, page 59 to 68.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe I could introduce this one. This item is known to members of council who sit on the Ag Service Board. This matter was reviewed with Ag Service Board members on December 14th. I believe it's quite straightforward. Perhaps Mr. Elignac can hit any highlights or answer any of your questions. Today, we're requesting 3 readings.
Thank you for the leadway, your worship to council. As you see in your package, there is the bylaw. As Mr. Chernowski had made note, this was presented to the service board. The main items that I want to address is we never had any clear direction on the determination of the types of signs. So if you take a look in Schedule A, if there is individuals that do damage the signs, there's your first, second, third strike with a violation. And then on Schedule B and Schedule C, the type of signs that are given. So if you have a individual lot sign where we have the country residential, or for example, Tagore Estates, where you have your individual lot signs, it determines what kind of sign you have, and then your rural addressing sign as a homeowner, and then your rural residential subdivision entrance sign. So for instance, if you come into Tagore Estates, the main entrance will show. And it also states that it's the landowner's responsibility to maintain and replace the sign. So what we're looking for is for council to give 3 readings to this bylaw.
Anybody got any questions before we get into the readings? No. Excuse me. All right, we can get the first reading, please. It's on page 59. Okay.
I move that Lamont County Council provide first reading to rural addressing bylaw 859.23.
Okay, all in favor? Carried 4. Thanks, Roy. Any more questions or anything? We'll proceed to the second reading.
The Lamont County Council provide second reading to rural addressing bylaw 859-23.
Okay, thanks. Dan, All in favor? Carried, 4. Any, if we get the next one, please.
I move that all Lamont County councillors provide unanimous consent for a third and final reading to rural addressing bylaw 859.23.
Okay, thanks, Darren. All in favor? 4, all 4 got consent. Okay, the final one, please.
I move that Lamont County Council provide third reading to rural addressing bylaw 859.23.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? All in favor, carried. Looks like we got a bylaw.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could introduce item 6.1, which is on page 69 of your agenda. This item was also addressed at the Ag Service Board on December 14th. It has to do with land holdings that we have that have been leased in the past. And Mr. Elenyak is bringing forward the recommendation that emerged from Ag Service Board.
Correct. There's one that was last year. It was on a 1-year lease, and there's 2 that are up for renewal. And what we're looking for is for Lamont County Council to approve that we rent them on or lease them out on a 1-year term.
Okay, any questions? Any questions or comments? Okay. We'll need a motion. Okay, Danny?
The Lamont County Agricultural Service Board recommend that Lamont County Council to tender Northeast 27-55-16 west of the 4th until November 30th, 2023. Northwest 256-16 west of the 4th till May 1st. And from May 1st to October 31st of 2023, and Northeast 2357-20 west of the 4th to custom farm it for the 2023.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All in favor? 4 of us carried.
Mr. Chair, administratively, we'd like to correct that motion to say that Lamont County Council, the councillor read the Lamont County Ag Service Board. Very good.
Did I not say that?
You said Ag Service.
You read the previous.
Okay.
We'll address that administratively.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, 6.2 intermunicipal.
So, Mr. Chair, this is where we suggested inserting the addition to the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
And no problem.
6. Yeah.
So the way the report was written, it included information that's proprietary to the proponents. Therefore, I would request that council go into closed session. And that would be in accordance with section 16, disclosure harmful to the business interests of a third party.
Okay, somebody gonna put us into closed session, please. Aaron.
Make a motion that Lamont County Council move into closed session at 10:32 a.m. pursuant to Division 2, Section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party, the Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act.
In their shop, so.
We're live.
Okay, we're live. We'll get a motion to come on a camera, please. Aaron, thank you.
I make a motion that Lamont County Council revert back to the January 10, 2023 regular council meeting at 11:03 a.m.
Okay, thank you. And then we got a motion on the board.
Favor?
Or all in favor, sorry. Okay, carried.
Okay, next motion.
Are you able to move it down?
I cannot even use the
Okay.
keyboard
Oh,
anymore.
that one,
Mr. Chair, if
So it-
Councilor could just read off the page,
It's on your page there.
okay, on,
page 79.
yeah, on 6.4, put policy, the last word.
Do I put it, okay, did Lamont County uphold its policy to reject, oh, that's what you want?
Yep.
Okay, that Lamont County, that council uphold its policy and reject construction of an additional approach at Southeast 15516 west of the fort.
Okay, those in favor? Nobody in favor, so defeated, I guess. Motion defeated.
Should have read the other, should be the other recommendation.
Yeah,
What's the problem?
Yeah, we should have done 6.4, the approval of it, and then
We accept.
I think we
Yeah.
did the wrong
this
one
was-
there.
Yeah, this was wrong.
The, 6.4, 6.4,
Yeah.
page 2 on 6.4.
Recommended approval of construction of the, additional.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
The hell am I looking at? Hey, what you-
Yeah, it's on page 2.
The one.
Lamont County Council approved construction of request addition approach. And then that's the one we're supposed to be read, and then,
Yeah. They,
the last motion.
We do, but it will be all messed up later. I would.
Motion to rescind.
Previous
Motion vote. Should go back to.
6.4 on page 2. Okay, could we get a motion to rescind?
I make a motion that we rescind previous motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, and now if we can get a motion, 6.4 on page 2, please.
well, that's the one,
Yeah.
one that's on the board?
Yeah.
Okay, that Lamont County Council approved construction of the request additional approach at Southeast 15516 west of the fort, contrary to the policy.
Okay, all those in favor?
No.
You know what I was doing.
Are you gonna go?
Yeah, no.
What?
That's a-
No, okay, defeated.
No.
Okay, 6.5,
To my madness here.
decision of Water Management Committee policy, page 86 to 95.
These policies were reviewed by council. We're just bringing to formally have the policies that relate to the Water Management Committee. So we've got policy 5005 Water Management Committee, 5006 Water Management Coordinator, and policy 5109 Water Management for rescission. As council had discussed, this committee hasn't been in place in a number of years, and all work done by that had been done by the committee is currently done under Public Works and ASB.
The committee is going to consist of,
Committees being rescinded because it is not being.
Okay, so that is because the drainage work is now being done by by Public Works.
Yeah, Public Works' drainage programs take care of all of the drainage works within the county. And as council had discussed back in November, the Water Management Committee has not met in a number of years. Functionally, it's not needed anymore.
No, no, that's fine.
Um,
I can make that.
Okay, Roy can make the motion, please.
Okay, I move the Lamont County Council rescind policy 5005, Water Management Committee. Policy 5006, Water Management Coordinator, and policy 5109, Water Management.
Okay, those in favor? Carried, all four. Okay, 6.6 consultant and contractor report. Page 96 and 97.
Takes his position at the presenters table. Council directed us on December 13th during its debate and deliberation of the 2023 budget to bring forward information on consulting firms and contract employees.
Thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. Good morning, Council. So as Mr. Tarnowski had stated, the resolution 2022-612 was to bring forward the list of consulting firms. So Lamont County currently has 2 consulting firms and 2 contract individuals that have been compensated between September 2022 and present. Salmon Engineering, who's doing some work with the Waterline project. Russell Farmer and Associates, who has been providing some work with the HR policy. Mr. Steffes, who has been providing some interim director work for us, as well as the last individual, Tracy Scott, who's been doing some interim work with our payroll to ensure that the items are balanced. And so these individuals were all, this list was provided based on the work that we know that's been done, as well as a review of the accounts payable registers for that period. So, and
what's that HR review going to cost us?
That one, the quote was in, I believe it was $10,000 to review the policies, provide information back, as well as just do a review of some additional items that were in there that he found as he was going. And you'll actually see the HR policy coming forward in a later item in the committee of the whole.
And the last 2 are doing what, sorry?
Mr. Steffes, Colin Steffes, is our Director of Planning and Development.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then Tracy Scott, working with the with the payroll programs.
So how long is the last one going to be?
Most likely getting the last couple of things wrapped up with our transition, and that should be in the neighborhood of the next month or so.
Well, is she with Russell Farm?
No, she's not. She's an individual.
So we're transitioning to a third party. We hired this individual to look after our interests in terms of this transition.
Okay. And this is going to be cheaper than having our staff, our own staff to let go?
Well, a large part of that was while I was on my short-term disability, that was to help get us in that time frame we needed to. So.
For practical purposes, we could not rely on our payroll person to do this work.
Simple.
Any more questions on the consultant report?
Yeah, just one. Okay, Russell and Farmer and Associates Consulting. What are they doing?
Filling the gap, one of the items on the business plan for 2022 was to get the policies up to date in our HR area, as well as getting the our practices together. And he's been assisting us to do that. The capacity in the HR department right now has been taxed, and so this is to ensure that that policy and our practices in that area are up to the standards that they should be.
Isn't that what Debbie McCann does?
No, the Debbie McCann's are legislative
Service
services.
policies, governance policies. This is the
What-
HR
Wouldn't
policies.
it be one of the policies that you would do?
It's a more specialized knowledge is required for the HR policies, as well as make sure that the legalities are covered and the matching with Alberta labor standards codes and OH&S and such.
So do those policies come before council or the changes?
They will be later on in today's package.
And Tracy Scott, she's employed by the county or?
As an individual, yes. So
As an
not as an employee, as a contractor.
Okay, she's not affiliated with anybody.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Should we have been in FOIP for that? Should we have gone into FOIP for this conversation?
Tracy was, I did ask her permission to provide her name in this
Okay.
open session, and she did provide that. So
Okay.
that's why we can do that in open session.
Mr. Chair, the motion is at the top of page 3.
Any more questions or discussion, you guys? Seeing none, okay, somebody make a motion on top page 3.
Page 3.
Yeah, very top,
Oh, here.
6-6, so he's top of 6-7.
Okay. That Lamont County Council accept the consultants and contractors report as information.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. 6-7, 2022 Provincial Education Requisition Credit Designated Industrial Requisition Credit Write-Off to be distributed at meeting.
Yes, so Ms. Kennedy has passed out the Lamont, or the item here for Lamont County's council's review. So I'll walk us through what this is. The reasoning why it's a handout is we didn't receive the actual application until after the deadline to get the agendas together. But overall, what this is, the government of Alberta requires us in our property tax calculations to also requisition for the education portion of property taxes. We've found, the province as a whole has seen it with the downturn in the oil and gas industry. There was a number of properties that have become insolvent, and they were unable to pay their debts to us. And part of that was that education tax portion of the property taxes. So to help the municipalities offset that burden of because the municipalities have to submit that to the province, even if they don't collect it. So there's a program called PERC and DIRC, commonly called that. So that's the provincial education requisition credit and the designated industrial requisition credit. So these are for oil and gas properties that that have not paid their bills. One of the pieces of the process to get this money back from the province is that we must write off these amounts. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop trying to collect the amounts. It's just that means we have to formally, as council, write that off. Then the province can reimburse us those funds. If in our collection efforts that we are able to collect that money in the future, we have to pay that money back. But it gives us that those funds now to be able to keep on with our budgets. One of the things that I will note, so in the last few pages, you'll see a spreadsheet with all of the names of the companies and the amounts that we are writing off. We are looking to get $11,000 from the provincial education portion and $300. This is on the second last page of your package. And $395 from the designated industrial properties. There is one company and that we have been chasing for a number of years. The amount that they owe us is just over $650,000. That one is not on this list because we are actively pursuing that one, and we'll be looking at potential court action if need be. So we do have one more year that we can go back to claim this amount of money on. So we've chosen not to write that one off to assist in our collection efforts. And then the rest are on this list here. These have all been, all of our efforts have been exhausted on these items here as well. But we, as much as we can, but we will still continue to make every effort we can. So the motion is going to be that the county council cancel the property taxes levied and write off $160,165 for the eligible properties and file an application by January 15th for eligible credits outlined in Schedule 1. That's that spreadsheet for the provincial education requisition credit and the designated industrial requisition credit programs.
So the total is 161?
160,165.24. And essentially the write-off is more of a formality so that we can apply for the grant. Well, as I said, this is not going to stop us from attempting to collect on these items.
Can we make a motion? I make a motion that Lamont County Council cancel the property tax levied and write off of $160,165.24 for the eligible properties and file an application by January 15th, 2023 for the eligible credits outlined in Schedule 1 of the Provincial Education Requisition Credit and Designated Industrial Requisition Credit programs.
Okay, all in favor? Great. 6.8 Northern Lights Library Board, 98 to 100.
So this is a request from the Northern Lights Library Board. You'll find that on page 100 of your package. And this has already been approved in budget. The board, however, asked us if we could have a motion the increase in the levy, as well as there's a little section on the bottom of that letter that shows that we allocate 25% to each of the libraries. So this is an amount that we've allocated every year. So this motion is essentially just to confirm that that we are approving that levy increase of 1.5% for 2023. Again, it's a formality. We've already included this in our budget, and so there's be no additional financial impact to budget.
So, Mr. Chair, we have not included in the motion any kind of a reallocation to the 4 communities named on page 100, but that is within your purview if you wish to adjust that.
Okay. That the Lamont County Council approve the Northern Lights Library Board levy increase of 1.5% for the 2023 budget year.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. 6.9, Roscoe Greek Orthodox Church of
Transfiguration. So, Mr. Chair, this church was made a municipal historic site back in 2006. One of the rules of our bylaw, if I'm not mistaken, bylaw, is that council must approve in writing all repairs to the building per section 6A and 6B of the Historical Resources Act. The bylaw is on page 105. Does not appear that we included the Historic Resources Act, but any repairs to the building per 6A and 6B must be approved in writing.
Any questions?
Nope. Let them do it.
Okay,
I gotta make that motion.
okay, or I'll make the motion.
Lamont County Council approved the request received from the Russo Greek Orthodox Church of the Transfiguration, Star Edna, Board Chair to paint the church and bell tower.
All in favor? Everybody carried. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll notify them.
okay. 610, follow-up action tracking list.
I got a question.
Okay.
before we Move on.
Yep.
The painting, this is for restoration, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Is this all gonna be original colors and original painting?
Lead free.
Lead free? Yeah, no. Those days they had lead in it, eh? So,
I'm not aware at that level of specificity. I do know that they are applying for a grant from the province. So my belief
it will
was
be-
that application would
Yes.
address all of those specifics.
okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go with 610, follow-up action tracking list.
Mr. Chair, starting on page 107 and going till about 114, we've got a status. You'll see that many of them are complete and will not appear on the next version. We have a few that continue to be in progress. Rather than addressing them by me, I'm happy to address any questions. The one note I will make that on page 112, under regular council meeting of September 27th, we have re-included the stop order that Councillor Anaka asked about on December 13th. So that item is still ongoing. Again, the proponent has addressed 2 of the 3 requirements, and every indication is that they are on track to addressing the 3rd. So we have re-included that at Councillor Anaka's request. I'm happy to answer any questions. As far as page 111, October 11th, Regional Chief Milligan will provide a verbal update on the emergency response livestock trailer. We've had some good developments there. And I think you'll see in the weeks to come, this list will, once again be reduced to a critical few. You'll see many are reflected as complete.
That livestock trailer, anything been done yet, or is it just?
That's what he said.
That's what he said. He
There was good
Okay.
progress.
Yeah, he'll give you a verbal
Change
on that.
report.
We had some very productive conversations. We're just catching up with some of the others after the Christmas break.
Any questions, you guys?
Oh, no.
We'll give a couple more minutes to look over. Okay, any questions? And he's got one coming, he just doesn't know what it is.
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
No, no.
Sorry, I thought you're
No, no.
prepping for a question there. All right, if we can get a motion on the 610, please, follow-up action tracking list. Page 3, 610.
Yeah, I got it. Where the hell do you see?
Okay, Aaron.
I'll make a motion that Lamont County Council accept the follow-up tracking action list as information.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. 611, add-on power line placement, 611.
Okay, I had a question from ratepayer. There's a power line being replaced northeast of Andrew, and the question is, apparently it was placed in the right of way. Now in some places they're moving it onto the private property. The concern is about replacing the power line in the county right of way in the ditch because they're going around a shelter belt or something that they can't cut down or trim or whatever. No permission to do it there. So the landowner's concern was, is this going to affect drainage when they do the work in the ditch, depending how it's done? And a question I have is, do they need a permit when they come to the work? I know in 2018, they replaced power lines for 8 miles on 164 north of Andrew. That was a wet fall. they kind of, the east shoulder of that road is totally destroyed because they worked in that wet weather. So just brief discussion and what happens there.
So in my experience with mainline replacements, typically it's been with Fortis, a little bit with REAs. Under their master servicing agreement, they are allowed to put the poles within the municipal right of way. And going back many years when poles first went in, it was easier to get access to private property because it was the landowners that were wanting the poles put in at the time. But the current practice is they want to get it off private land, put it onto inside the road right away. So typically it's within that first 3 feet off of property line, approximately a meter, so that they can maintain it without needing access to the property every time. In regards to permitting, they will notify us if they're doing any new lines, any line replacement, unless it's an emergency, there's power outage. And replacement or new project, they notify us. Typically, we just sign off that there's no issues. To proceed, they're just wanting to know if we have any concerns with new lines, if there's crossing, something like that. They do require a road use agreement in the case of a mainline replacement where they're doing, one or things like that. Yes, they would require a road use agreement from us when they can move, when they can't. If we do get a wet summer or wet fall, we can shut them down for a period of time while the road needs to dry out, or we can actually make them maintain the road while they're working, similar to any other road use agreement we have.
And we inspect their work, I presume.
What's that, sir?
We inspect their work, I presume.
We inspect the roads, but we don't inspect the poles, the lines.
Talking more about the drainage implications.
Yeah, so if there are issues with drainage, in this instance, we can inspect it and make sure that any planned work they have there is not going to impact it. I have in the past authorized I believe it was Fortis at the time, to move the line to the other side of the road because their proposed alignment was going to impact drainage. They were going to end up putting the poles right in the middle of a drainage ditch. So we allowed them to move it to the other side to minimize the impact there. But typically on a north-south road, the lines will be on the east side. On an east-west road, the line will be on the north side. That's where they try and put it, but it's sometimes it just move the lines to minimize impact to drainage and to road users.
Okay, I don't think it's a main line, but I will send you the land locations and the contact number.
When I say main line, I mean everything from not a service. So from the pole onto private is a service, and
Okay.
the mains are
Okay.
within the.
Okay, so yeah, it is a main line then.
So somebody's going, when they come hand a plan in, somebody's going to check to make sure it's not in a drainage. We had on 195, they were putting it right smack. There was a mile of the ditch is a drainage, and they were putting the power line right in the middle. That was before I was counselor, I made a call to Water Resources. They were shut down, and we farmed the land, and we had access to getting an easement. They moved it out. They shut the power line down. They moved it 3 feet over out of the ditch. And then we had here on 560 and 200, the county went right after that. They went and cleaned the ditch, and then the guys put the power line right smack in the middle of the drainage. Nobody at the time inspected, but we do have somebody inspecting now before you give them permission.
Yeah, when we do get the requests from Fortis, the notifications, we are inspecting them. The only ones I've seen this fall have just been for new services. So there's nothing new in the right of way except maybe a transformer on the pole or a new pole in the same location, just raising the height so they can get a new crossing. Nothing we've seen in the last 4 months has impacted anything on the road itself.
Okay, any more questions that answer your?
Yeah, I'll forward some information to Public Works.
Right, any more comments, you guys, or questions? Thanks, Derby. Get a motion, I guess, is information.
Will that work, Mr. Chair?
Power line, maybe you want on there. Power pole, verbal power pole reports or
Utility.
utility. There you go. Verbal utility report. It's good. Okay.
I move that Lamont County Council accept the verbal utility report as information.
Okay, that, all in favor? Okay. Guess that, we're gonna recess the meeting at 10 or 11:39 and go into committee of the whole meeting at 11:30, 11:40.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we just simply resolve into committee of the whole. The council meeting continues.
Okay, 7-1, employment policy 41.
Mr. Chair, we need the motion.
Sorry. Aaron got the first one.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that Lamont County Council resolve the January 10, 2023 regular council meeting to Lamont County or Committee of the Whole meeting at 11:39 a.m.
All in favor? Carried. Okay. The next one.
So, Mr. Chair, as has been our practice, prior to bringing policies, weighty policies for approval to council, we bring them to committee of the whole. We use the committee of the whole format to allow for a freer of exchange ideas, questions and answers. So Mr. Boyko is here to take you through a selection of employment policy amendments. We have also included in this package on page 49 the current policy handbook. And prior to that, you will see a number of individual policies that share the same policy number, but will have A, B, C, D to identify them. And what this allows us to do is to potentially amend policies without having to crack the whole book open. It will also allow us to ensure those that require council's approval are brought to council and those that don't are not. So Mr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Karnowski. So yes, as you may recall, this is actually, we started this discussion back in June 14th, 2022, Committee of the Whole meeting. And actually our first revision was at the September 27th meeting, but just to kind of give a bit of a background. So kind of to, the municipalities are governed by both bylaws and policies. And the problem that one of the problems that we found in this policy was that it was trying to do more than it should, and it was, for instance, bylaws govern council and the residents, while policies provide guidance from council to the CAO. And this policy was trying to do some items where it was governing council. It was also adding in administrative items that were more in the realm of the CAO, such as the performance appraisal item. And, you know, there was things in there that were saying, you know, council must. So what we've tried to do with this particular policy, we've broken it out into a number of policies. And one of the things that you'll see if you look on page 150, the table of contents of the old policy showed 33 different sections. But in amongst those sections, really none of the paragraphs were ever labeled or made, you know, points made. Makes it a little bit harder for interpretation. And an employment policy or HR policies, there's a lot of statutory things that must be put in there. And we wanted to make this policy a lot more clear so that when the CIO is interpreting it and the staff are interpreting it, that it's clear what council's direction is. And so this is mostly just mostly an update. You're going to see that a lot of the wording is going to stay the same because council approved some good things in there. But there's some updating for changes in legislation and such. We're removing some items like things like dress code. You know, the dress code area essentially said that staff should wash their hands after going to the bathroom. And that's that's not a governance item. We don't need to have those kind of things in a policy. That's an individual performance management item. We've removed things like workers' compensation, health benefits, and pension because those guidelines are already in place by other areas. So I'll just walk us through these policies and I'll talk about what we've taken out. And what we're leaving in. So essentially the top of the old policy had definitions and application and enforcement. We've moved that into each individual's policy section. So you won't be seeing that. But we'll kind of then start walking through each of these, the rest of these sections. So on page 118 is the employee code of ethics section. And that essentially replaces sections 3, 4, and 5 of the old policy. Not a lot has changed in here, most likely just cleaning up of wording and typographical errors. So this pretty much continues the same as the former policy 4162. This is about a 5-page policy. Did council want me to walk through it at this point? I know you guys had time to review it beforehand.
Well, hang on a second. When was this policy implemented? This is the new, you're implementing this new policy is what you want.
That's correct. This is a new policy. This is committee of the whole, so this is us just asking questions, you know, getting direction. So
it should be noted that the employee policy that's on page 149 is currently in effect. And what we are doing is bringing forward policies with some adjustments.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So we're not asking for you to approve it today. We're asking for.
I just have a quick question on it. So, because I didn't get to 149 yet.
Okay.
In 3.3 of your policy 771, do we have this currently? The $65 a day if they are on call? That's, I didn't get the.
Sorry, which page?
Page 125, sorry.
Yes, that is a current amount.
Okay, so I have a question because I've had a few employees that have brought forward that they have never received this. And that's what I just wanted to.
Is page 125, is this what you're bringing forward or is this what we have now?
It's a combination. This is what we in. I'll actually show you the highlighted areas of what we're changing as we bring it forward. But yes, that is what we currently have now. That the particular item that Councillor Wick is talking about is a current practice.
So why would they be under the understanding that they were never receiving this?
Well, they're greater off for you if they're all on call.
So this is
So did they get?
They're not always.
No, they're not
No,
always on
they're
call.
on
This is more when Mr. Dietz can clarify some of this. So.
Yeah, sorry, I just, because
We have had discussions with some staff, grader operators, shop staff, our plow truck operators. When we are having severe weather events or
Yeah.
are projected to,
Yeah.
we are putting our grader operators on standby for the weekends. We're trying to put one mechanic on standby. We've got one dedicated plow truck operator per weekend, and then we'll go up to 3 if it's going to be severe weather. And the discussion we had with them is if you are on call, you need to put it on your timesheet, because the people that are doing payroll don't know who's on call when. They're not on call every day, just at select weekends, and certain weeks where we're projecting poor weather overnight.
So this is not during a grader operator's 410s.
No.
This is-
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this would be over the Christmas break,
Yeah.
over weekends, stat holidays is where they would get on-call pay.
Okay.
The way it works now is they get $65 per day when they're on call. If they do get called out, they get minimum 3 hours pay, the $65 or what they worked, whichever is greater.
Yep.
How much notice do you got to give them to be on call on Saturday? Let's say you want them on call Saturday, Sunday, it's forecasting a storm.
So what we've worked out with them is we're going to try and notify them by midday Thursday, because the long-term forecasts typically change if you're looking out past that. If there is an operator that has a previous engagement, then we're going to try and make sure we've got somebody that can fill in for them. We do have, we've got 9 grader operators over the 8 beats. And then we have 3 or 4 additional staff that can run grader as well. And we also have our ASB department that has experience, some of them have experience running graders.
Okay. So yeah, so we jumped ahead to the compensation one, but if there's no questions on the code of ethics policy, there any other questions on the hours of work policy, which is the one that we just referenced? So, and of course, and then just for to match up, this policy replaces sections 11, 12, and 13 of the former policy. Page 127. This is the vacation policy. One of the things that we wanted to bring forward on this particular policy, so we didn't change it for the 2023 year, and it's item 2.1. So what our current practice is that vacation allotments are provided to everybody at the beginning of the year. And so if you're a employee that has 3 weeks of, that qualifies for 3 weeks of holidays, then you will be getting that 3 weeks on day 1 that you start. That's not a common practice. What we would like to do is at the end of 2023, change this to a policy where you accrue it as you go. From a application perspective, giving all their holidays at once, if they work for say 6 months, they would only have qualified for half of that allotment. And then if they're terminated or if they quit, we then have to claw that back from their payroll. It's not a great practice to do, and it can be challenged by labor standards. So what we would like to do is, we don't want to incorporate that right at the beginning of this year, because staff may have used up their holidays or not saved up in in anticipation of a larger use in the future. So we don't want to inconvenience our employees. We want to give them notice that we're going to be changing this and then throughout the year, but we left it the same as it has in item 2.1 at this time being. So just to allow for that continuing of the practice we're doing.
So there's a perfect example. Rather than having to crack open the whole employment policies, we would only have to address this component of it.
Yeah.
So, but I thought they had to work a year before they get holidays.
Our current policy, the way it's stated as up in 1.1, has been 0 to 4 years of service. So starting day one is when your holidays have been allotted. So that's the current practice. And that's in section 16 of our current policy. So that would be page 171. So in alignment with that, we've actually also looked at, because the first one was 0 to 4 years, 1.1.2. In the previous policy, it said 5 to 15 years of service. It would be more appropriate to change that to 5 to 14 years of service.
Yeah.
And then 1.1.3 be 15 to 24. Yeah. So 0 to 5 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 to make 5.
That doesn't apply to all employees, does it?
Sorry, which one? The 3
The 3 weeks automatically when you start.
Yes, that applies to all employees, unless it's superseded by section 1.2. The vacation allotment contained in 1.1 may be superseded by a vacation allotment contained in an employment agreement. So if somebody, when they're starting, negotiates something different with the CAO, then that will supersede this policy. And that is again on page 171. The wording was, or as contained in the employment agreement. We've just cleaned up that language to make it a little bit more enforceable.
Is this the one that contractor's working on?
Yes, this is the new one that's been provided by him.
But it does state at 1.1, full-time county employees on a permanent basis.
Yes.
So it doesn't reflect onto our.
The chair was asking whether or not that was the contractor identified in an earlier report was working on this policy.
Yeah.
I think that's what the.
Yeah. But if you're talking about part-time or seasonal employees, that is section 4. So seasonal employees are, so on page 128, you'll see that for seasonal employees, 4.2.1, we pay out 4% for the first 5 years of service and 6% for the remaining years, so for years after 5 years of service. So the seasonal employees don't get a vacation bank, they get it paid out. And then it's their responsibility to, if they're taking a vacation day during their seasonal employment, that they save up that money.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's already on their check.
So yeah, so 4.3 shows that all vacation pay will be payable at the end of each pay period. So we do not hold that vacation pay. We pay it out to people. And that has been our current practice. So if there's no other questions, we'll keep on going. Page 130. This is the personal leave policy. And so one of the things that with allotting personal days or any type of leave at the beginning of their time at the organization, which is what our current practice was. So page 173 said personal leave will reset at the beginning of each calendar year. So January 1, if you used up all of your 15 days of personal leave, which is personal leave is in place of sick time, needing to go for meetings like maybe financial, that type of thing. These are to be used at the discretion of the manager. But we were resetting that at the beginning of the year. So we're putting a change in here into this policy. Instead of resetting that and everybody getting the balance at the beginning, either of their time here or the beginning of the year, we're recommending changing it to an accrual basis. So if you work a month, you get 1.25 days. If you work 2 months, you'll get it built up until your 15 days are there. One of the things that an example of something that could happen. So for instance, if your CFO was on short-term disability at the end of the year, he could have had his 15 days at the end of the year, and then January get another 15 days right away with a possible leave of 30 days. This kind of policy is going to eliminate that type of thing. So the 15 days will get used up, and then they'll start to be earned again in the next year. You'll never be able to earn more than 15 days, and you'll never be able to take more than 15 days in any one year. But it just helps to not have to do any of that type of clawing back at when an employee leaves mid-year. So that's the big part of this. Again, that clawing back something like a personal leave day is not doesn't quite coincide with the way labor standards says that you can. You can take back vacation days, but you can't take back things like personal leave days. So Section 1 is quite wordy, but it essentially tells us that we're going to accrue it for each individual, and it talks about if you're a part-time and how those part-timers get their personal leave.
15 days is a lot of days.
That is the policy that has been in place. We didn't make any changes to that.
One of the things that we report in our business plan is the consumption of the personal days, and you'll see that at the beginning of February. Last year, it was 7 days on average per employee, so. Yeah. Some use more, some use less.
Yeah, and one of the things about this, there is the management has the right to. This isn't just because the employee says that they want to use a personal day. It's not an added vacation day. It has to be there has to be an appropriate reason why they're doing that. So, and we do have, like up in section 2.2, if there is, if they're gone for longer than 3 days, they're going to need to get a doctor's note. That would be in 2.5. So we are trying to, with this new policy, we're trying to add a few more steps in there that we can manage this a little bit better. And then on page 132, one of the things that we just wanted to make sure our old policy didn't have this. Just talking about that it will not once you receive your maximum, you don't get any more, as well as you're only able to use. Let me just see where that was. Yeah, in section 1.5 is you can only use a maximum of 15 days per calendar year. So moving on to page 133. So this is job protected leaves. This is an addition to. There's a lot of the information is an addition to the new policy or to the old policy. The old policy talks about it in section 21 and 22. However, these are the ones Alberta Labor Standards has put in for that we don't have any choice. So we're not paying for these leaves. These are just ones that if you take any of these leaves, your job will be protected for that time period. So there is some that have some extensive time frames, such as if you've lost the compassionate care leave, but we have essentially put this in here just to have it noted for staff. One of the things that we did want to bring to council's attention, section 2.3, our old policy was silent on this, but if an employee chooses to maintain the benefits while they're on a leave, whether it be health related or maternity, that the employee will be required to pay the portion of premiums for medical benefits, and that the county will pay the employer portion up to a maximum of 12 months. And then 2.3, talking about the LAPP contributions, that they can either, somebody who's on leave can either pay it at that time, or they can pay it when they return to work. And that is a process that you would apply to Alberta Pensions Administration for. So this is just a little bit more clarity in how we're administering the program. Okay, so this is a fairly long section. And again, this is just committee of the whole. So if there's some changes, we can come back to them when this is brought forward the next time. Moving on to page 141. So this is recruitment and promotion. This is sections 7, 8, and 9 of the old policy. There just again was minor grammatical errors were corrected in this. This is similar to what we have right now. Page 145 would be the drug and alcohol section. So this is replacing section 26 of the employment policy. And again, this is just more grammatical than anything on these corrections. So I just wanted to take you through to what we have not put in the new policies. So again, definitions, application, and enforcement, those are going to be in each of these individual policies. The dress code, we're removing that section. Salaries and wages is a section that we will be bringing forward a new administrative policy because that is delegated to the CAO by bylaw. The statutory holidays was previously adopted in September, so that one was corrected. Workers' compensation, health benefits, and pension, sections 17, 18, and 19. Those are areas that are already covered by other guidelines, such as WCB guidelines, the benefits plan. The sections 23, 24, and 25, those we're moving out of the HR policy or the employment policy, and that's going to be moved into occupational health and safety policies. And we already have some of those, so we're just, this particular policy that we currently are using has been doubling up on that. And then performance reviews, discipline, and grievances, 27, 28, and 29. Those have been delegated to the CAO by bylaw, so that'll be an admin policy. We're also removing the appendixes where there's things like the performance appraisal. And again, the performance appraisal had things that weren't necessarily appropriate in a performance appraisal. For instance, one of the sections is you're rated on how good you fill out your timesheets. It's not really a governance section item to be having that in the policies.
Just a second, Rodney, why are you taking the dress code out? What's
the dress code is administrative in nature, and it's one of the sections it says is that's where it says you need to wash your hands after going to the bathroom. So it's not a governance level item to be addressing here. That's administrative level and more performance management than anything. So if I come to council dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, that's going to be brought forward by the CAO to me in my performance appraisal that I'm not appropriate. So those kind of things.
Probably sooner.
Yeah. So it's just those items are not a governance item that needs to be addressed. It's best addressed at a performance management level.
One part of the existing dress code says employees attending or presenting at council are required to dress in their regular work attire. I don't wear a suit and tie every day.
Oh, I know that, but I was just getting at,
That's not part of your job, maybe to wear hats.
So yeah, so those are more individual areas. So.
because that personal hygiene, that's where it says the washing of the hands, but the dress code doesn't have, that's the next part of it there, so.
But, those are more items though that again are in the CIO realm, not in the governance realm. We did take out section 30 termination. It's an unenforceable section of our policy that's contained in our employment contracts and in current practice. So that section was removed. And then the last three: training and development, employee privacy, and electronic device, email and internet. Those will all be new administrative policies as well. So I know there was a lot that I went through here. I'd welcome questions after the fact if there's some questions that may be brought forward, but we'll be bringing these forward again at the next council meeting for ratification.
I don't think I'll be ready in the next council meeting. There's a lot of reading here yet, so.
I have a question. So how do you deal with the legalization of cannabis and use by employees? And how do you enforce that, or can you do checking on that, or?
That is it's an interesting consequence that has come forward with the legalization of cannabis. And so there is a section in here where we talked about it. Let me just find that in there.
But you can't, alcohol is legalized,
Yeah.
and you can't come to work
Impaired.
impaired, or even smelling with alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely.
So page 146 deals with drug and alcohol. 145, 146.
So yeah, so we have added so in
That's the old
1.1.
policy.
Yeah, 1.1.
145, 146 is the old policy.
No,
No, that's the new.
that's
policy.
149 is the old policy. 146 is still is a new policy. So 1.1 talks about while in the course of employment, including meal periods, scheduled breaks, or while assigned on call on county property or when using county vehicles or equipment, Lamont County employees are prohibited from using non-prescription drugs, alcohol, or cannabis. One of the problems is being under the influence. So 1.1.2. So we've put that in there to that we're now prohibiting any of that use. Problem right now is testing. It's very difficult to test what level of.
Well, that's what I was just gonna ask. Is there a test level that they have to be in compliance with to be legal or not legally impaired?
There really is nothing that can say that you're, like the blood alcohol you can do.
Yeah.
There's a scale. Right now, there's not a test that is accurate enough for us to be able to abide by it. So it's a yes or a no in this particular case. So.
1.3 requires that employees report impairment. So should somebody not report impairment and show positive on a cannabis test, that provides the employer some latitude. Regrettably, the establishment sees use of drugs as something that often needs to be accommodated either through training or some sort of detoxification or otherwise. So regrettably, our federal government legalized without addressing all of the specifics of it.
Yeah. I think the only thing that actually is kind of a positive is that we don't have a level. Is because at a level, you have a certain amount that you can be. Without a level, you're either you are or you aren't. Either you're impaired or it's in your system or you're not.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cut and dry line that if somebody does have it in their system legally, there's no legal limit. So it's in your system, you're impaired. That's the way major companies use it, like oil field companies.
Yeah.
That's
And
how
we-
they get away with it on their site.
And we have like 2.2, we've also put in things that management can, if they have reasonable grounds to believe that they are impaired. So we've put in some additional items to help on that particular case. One of the things that our previous policy was a little bit soft on, and Mr. Tarnowski talked about that, was the accommodation. So 2.1.2 in our old policy, that the county may request a candidate to attend an assessment performed by a substance abuse professional. So we've added at the end of that with the cost to be borne by the candidate. So this is not something that the county would then be responsible for doing if they see somebody that came forward as a candidate to in a job position. We've also 2.1, we've clarified our current policy and the fact that pre-employment drug testing may be required before or after a conditional offer of employment is extended. That was before it, previously it was after the offer has been extended. So problem that happens with that, I offer you a position, send you for testing, you're now my employee. So if you do have a drug problem now I have a duty to accommodate. We can do, especially, mostly this is around safety sensitive positions. So we got an operator coming, we can say, no, you need to go get a drug test before we offer you the job. Yeah. And that would be borne in our cost, of course, but the, you know, that gives us a little bit more freedom to have our candidates be drug-free before we offer them a job.
So if he went for a drug test and he tested positive, will we still hire him?
No, because then, because we haven't extended the offer. But if in the past, if we extended the offer first and then sent them for a drug test,
We're liable.
it really puts us in a very awkward position. So are we terminating the position? Are we not hired? You know, all of the things. So that is a clarification from our old policy to our new policy that helps clean that up a bit.
Well, and 2.13 is a really good deterrent. So we will not offer you the job. We're not going to prevent you from applying again in the future, but we won't offer you the job this time. So it's a pretty strong deterrent that somebody should come clean every day to work.
Is that we're going to do that for even seasonal staff that's coming back? You're going to do a drug test before you hire them?
Depending on the position, and you know, the safety sensitive nature of it. So,
well, they're all driving county vehicles, so
then they should. Yes.
This one guy tested negative last year, and he still got employment here. So
Positive or negative?
He tested positive, and they still hired him.
So then that's something we'll, you know, going forward, this policy says no.
That was my question.
Yeah, because they did last year. The guy failed and he still got a job.
This particular policy now says no. Our old policy didn't allow us to do that. So that's the big part of it. So the way of the wording of our old policy was, you've offered them a letter, now you have to accommodate. So any questions on that? Overall? Again, like I said, well, you'll have more opportunity to ask questions as well when we bring it forward for ratification. Feel free to ask me questions in between that time frame as well. I know this is a fairly long and complicated policy. So we do have our recommended motion is that the Committee of the Whole direct administration to bring forward the revised HR policy as discussed at the Committee of the Whole to a future council meeting.
Future.
And that's when the,
It's not next.
It's not the next on a future one yet.
Yeah.
All right,
Would council like to have further opportunity to discuss this at the next council meeting?
yeah, well, it needs
That
more
would be
discussion.
possible, yeah,
It needs more discussion before it comes back.
sure.
So perhaps the motion should be to refer the matter to the January 24th meeting of
So
council.
I don't know if is everybody, I don't think everybody's here on the 24th.
Yeah, could you make it farther down?
It's gotta be further down, yeah.
I think everybody is here on the 24th because
That
You're
doesn't
back?
give us much time to look at it.
Valentine's Day.
I'm saying refer it to that meeting so you can ask your questions,
Discuss it.
approval after the 24th.
Or
Then
whatever.
we can move it one more time if we need
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
This one's pretty, gotta spend a little time on it.
Yeah, and next week we're gone.
Into February.
Yeah, well, that's what I would think. Bring it back to your February meeting, first February. It's February what, 10th,
14th.
14th?
Valentine's Day, it won't be
Yeah.
here.
14th, you won't be here? I won't be here on the 14th.
Sweetheart Day.
It's one of our 15 days we're using.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be refer it for 2 weeks. By that time, you ought to have had an opportunity to read it and ask any specific questions.
It's gotta go, we gotta go through this pretty close, so. We can,
We'll
move
do
it
that.
up a little more again.
When we're in Grand Prairie, we'll go through it.
Like sessions are only during the day. Your evenings are free.
Yeah.
100%. All right, so how are we gonna word that?
So my suggestion was that Lamont County Council refer this matter for further discussion on January 24th. If that works for you.
You can move it. Well, enough.
Well, we'll have to move it up one more time, because you're gonna be gone, you're not gonna take that with you.
Well, I got a couple days after to read it, but I can make it, whichever you guys decide.
Put it there and we can move it forward a little more.
Yeah, if need be.
Got a policy that we're,
Future meeting in February.
This thing is,
That's what we said, but that's wanted there.
Refer.
Does that work for you?
Yeah.
I imagine if you have any specific questions, if you want to send those ahead, we'd be happy to evaluate them.
okay, Aaron,
I'll make the motion that Committee of the Whole direct administration to refer the revised HR policies as discussed in Committee of the Whole on to January 24th, 2023 council meeting for further discussion.
all in favor? Carried.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, lunch has been waiting.
Okay,
So just
so, 1222, We'll recess for lunch.
Till 1 o'clock, safe to say?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
Oh,
Let's restart the meeting here at 1:03 p.m. The January 10th, 2023 meeting. And we're going to start with where we left off at 7.2 organizational chart changes report, page 217 to 220.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Boyko will take you through this. My only opening comments is that this is a reflection of the approved budget from December 13th. And we provide two versions of the graph, one that shows the changes and one that shows the graph finalized.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. Just kind of a little bit of background on there. The MGA describes the main responsibilities of the CAO as the administrative head of the municipality. CAO bylaw has further delegated the hiring, dismissing, so forth of municipal employees. And so with every budget season that comes, there's levels of services that are changed and adjusted. To meet those levels of service, resources are usually added or subtracted. And in this particular case, we had a little bit of both. Our resources in the human resource section that were added and subtracted. One of the things that we did this in this budget season is that administration had recommended to embargo and not to fill some certain positions to meet some higher priority objectives in the 2023 budget. And you'll see those on the organizational chart as black items. And they're there, but they won't be filled. And so that it makes it easier in future years when those positions are brought back into the active structure that we can fund them. The money that we're saving as an organization from that is going to be going to meet some of the other needs as we had discussed in our strategic planning sessions and our budget. So on page 219, you'll see the org chart as it now is in 2023. So these are the positions that that are implemented and moving forward. To show you where this came from, page 220 shows you all of the positions. What has changed is either in yellow or black, and then it may be a name, it may be an added position, that type of thing. So if we just walk through the top of that, legislated services officer after April 30th is going to be an embargoed position. The payroll clerk has been lowered to just a benefits clerk. It's still in the organization, but it'll be at a lesser pay. Council approved adding in a GIS/IT technician. Those positions are both within the Chief Financial Officer's department. In the Planning and Community Services area, there was an addition of a development engineer, 1.0 FTE. Going down to Public Works, the seasonal administrative assistant was removed from the organization and updated to a full-time FTE. So there are now 2 FTEs within the Public Works department. The drainage and approach supervisor FTE was, I believe that was renamed. A fleet supervisor was added in, and the capital projects and bridge supervisor was embargoed, and the inventory and asset management coordinator was removed from the organization.
I think I noticed a couple of errors here. The operations foreman position should be yellow. The drainage approach supervisor should be gray. That didn't change.
Correct.
We seem to have a version control issue. One earlier version seems to have been included in the agenda. The other thing is that the laborer 2 FTE should be gray because that didn't change, but the seasonal, rather than showing 17, should show 19. My apologies. I clearly didn't review this closely enough when the agenda was assembled. Go ahead, Rodney, sorry.
The
Yeah,
fleet
no problem.
supervisor is a mechanic dash supervisor.
That is correct. Yeah. And then the last thing I did mention, the parts procurement there is crossed out as well, so. So yeah, that person will be the overall supervisor as well as being the mechanic in the shop as well.
So this one here that we got is the right one, not what Peter's talking about, right?
No, there's two errors in that one. The
one we got.
Yeah.
On page 219, seasonal should show 19, council added 2.
No, but 220 is the changed one, isn't it? Page
220 is the one to just follow through the changes. So 219 is the final one of that. So you'll notice in 219 that you don't see the positions that we've removed from the organization, such as parts procurement, if you look at the bottom.
The only correction on 219 is that seasonal should show 19, not 17.
That's correct.
We'll be happy to provide you updates of both of those following the meeting.
And so the recommendation on this is that this be accepted as information.
Say that again?
This accepted as information. So there's no changes required.
So you really have no truck drivers outside of the 2 seasonal?
There's equipment operator, truck drivers. There's 5 of them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Bottom 219. Yeah.
So now we have 3 mechanics plus a fleet supervisor?
That's correct.
To be more accurate, 2 mechanics, a lead mechanic, and a fleet supervisor.
Well, he said that the mechanic is fleet supervisor also.
Mm-hmm. The fleet supervisor is supposed to be the mechanic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can pull wrenches in.
Okay, what does the fleet supervisor do? What is his job description?
The fleet supervisor will be responsible for all the day-to-day supervision of the shop staff, as well as parts procurement, scheduling of contracted services for equipment repairs, ordering parts and equipment, as well as all the paperwork that's currently being done by our parts procurement person. And when time permits, they will be working in the shop as well.
Okay, so he'll be doing all our purchasing of equipment, trucks.
So purchasing our parts for equipment, as well as assisting us in developing our tenders for our new equipment.
Okay.
And council was also looking for a more proactive approach to ordering parts rather than it being a hour by hour thing, which it currently is.
Thank you.
So we have this person in place?
No, we don't. We have an ad out right now. We actually have ads out for our full-time admin assistant, our fleet supervisor, and our operations supervisor. Those were all posted last week.
That bin position, is that the girls at the front there?
Yes. So we have, right now, we have a one person as a temporary who's been in place since August, who's been filling in for our employee who retired back in the fall. And we've just posted that here last week. Now that council's approved that position to be full-time.
You only have right now one full-time.
We have one full-time admin, and then we have one person on a contract basis. Her contract ends at the end of the month.
Okay, so once that's over, then you're hoping to hire one more.
We are currently, the ads are out. We'll be hopefully conducting interviews here towards the end of the month. And then based on the interviews, hopefully have either the person we have or somebody else who's applied in place for February.
Any more questions? All right, get a motion to accept that there's information. Aaron,
I'll make a motion that Lamont County or Lamont Committee of the Whole accept the organizational changes report as information.
okay, all in favor? Approved. Okay, and then we need a recommendation to go back from committee of the whole back to the council meeting.
I move the Lamont County Committee of the Whole revert back to the January 10th, 2023 regular council meeting at 1:15 p.m.
Okay, thanks, Roy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, director's report 8.1 corporate service department report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this briefing is, the last department report was October 11th, 2022. Just as background, corporate services perform services that support the entire organization. So HR, finance, communications, building, and the IT departments. So since that time, HR, we've had seasonal staff terminations for the 2022 positions. Most of those ended in end of October 2022. Continuing on with the team and leadership training as approved in budget. Revisions to the employment policy. So you've seen those today. So that first amendment was presented September 27th, and then the further ones today. We had the changeover of the payroll system to an external contractor with only some minor hiccups as we're going through. Most of that has been going through very, very well. Recruitments, excuse me, for our public works and community services directors, ag and environmental coordinator, as well as the executive assistant. And of course, continued support on various managers with disciplinary issues. In the communications area, the thing we'd like to kind of highlight in there is approximately 350 updates and posts over that time period, 13 news releases, which resulted in significant media coverage. And we have a regional approach, so we're looking at not only our local papers, but going out to Fort Saskatchewan, Vegreville, and such. Creation of multiple internal communications, from everything from planning and strategy to ongoing and annual documents. Worked on the tax sale. There's a fair amount of messaging and communication that went out around that. The event planning, of course, for the variety of departments and social events, including the Christmas party, FNMI, and Remembrance Days. From finance, we had managed the strategic planning sessions with council, reviewing the service levels mainly, and then the Heartland initiatives to come up with our strategy for the 2023 budget. Of course, then there was the budget committee meetings, the 28th to the 30th. And this was a fairly big project. It's the way we're doing our budget committee is we gather input from all the management areas. I think the base budget utilization was very effective this year. And then, of course, council input on that base, as well as the approval of any service enhancements and reductions. The tax recovery auction was completed. This is normally an annual process, and so we've got back into that process. Very successful as we collected almost $70,000 in outstanding of taxes. And we'll be bringing forward the items that the properties that did not get sold in that for council's deliberation in a following meeting. We paid out the church reserve funds as per the council motion and completed an interim audit. And essentially there was only two minor journal entries that needed to be made. And they've provided a recommendation regarding our uncollectible taxes that we'll be bringing forward at the end of the year with our audit. On the building side, there was an issue with the heating in the meeting room. And unfortunately, it caused a small fire, but the electrical panel did its job. The breakers kicked out, and it was extinguished before it even became a problem. So the repairs have been completed by the building contractor. Issues in our plumbing continue to haunt us. There was some issues with the kitchen needing some repair and some augering of drains. We replaced the plexiglass in council chambers here and decorated our building for the Lamont County Light Up. On the IT side, we've completed the evergreening of the computer systems as per our budget. And in fact, we did some considerable shopping around and got some very good pricing on peripherals such as monitors and the associated wiring and such. One of the things that is going to be changing in the new year here, Town of Lamont has provided notice that they'll be purchasing their own internet now. Not sure if council is aware, but in the past, the town shared our internet via a wireless connection, as well as our phone system, and they paid us for that, and we then in turn paid our contractors. And then with the rest of it, it's just basically IT has been regular maintenance during their weekly visits. Did some warranty work on our laptops, and because those are some items that our techs weren't able to handle. So, and that's all for my report for this from October to date.
Okay, thanks, Rodney. Anybody got any questions? Roy?
I know you probably don't have this information on hand, but what was the government payment to Lamont County for the COVID?
Which?
COVID.
For COVID?
COVID.
Do you know?
I'd have to look that up. I don't have that.
And how did we spend that money?
I'll look that up and I'll bring that in a future report for council. So
okay.
Yeah.
Dave, more questions? what happens with the internet here now? Are we paying extra to have them on? So ours will go down now, or what's going to happen?
Yes, ours will go down. So we had increased bandwidth for them. We use SuperNet. So in SuperNet, you pay for the amount of bandwidth you want, and it just goes up in increments. So we'll be lowering that to our needs. So.
And there was a requirement in terms of timing of notice, so we weren't caught off guard.
Yes, that's correct.
Any more questions for Rodney?
Did I go back to this yet?
Sure. Council wishes, yes?
Yeah. On, I guess health and safety, we have one. Deputy Fire Chief, Regional. Okay, then we go on to, I guess, Andrew, Fire Department. Is that 14 on staff?
14 paid on-call firefighters.
You know, I have a real problem there. We had nobody to come to the fire there. There was a fire in Andrew. You have 14 people on call, paid on call.
Not paid on call.
So what
said.
paid on call means is as they come to the fires, they're not volunteer firefighters. They're paid for their attendance at each fire or in training sessions. And it is definitely Chief Milliken may address this in his report, which is following me, if that's appropriate. So
Yeah, like I said, it creates a problem, I think, that we, you have 14 people, nobody in town yet to help with the fire or to come to the fire call.
Mr. Chair, councilors may recall that we highlighted during budgets that daytime response is unfortunately very low. And again, Chief Milliken has an idea we're developing to try to help address that.
Okay, that's what's my concern.
Okay, back on that, Andrew Fire, all these fire departments, you have the full-time equivalents. How do you derive at those numbers? 0.46, 0.91, 0.59, 1.13, and 1.110. How do you arrive at that?
So that's essentially, that's a 3-year average based on the number of approximate full-time.
Okay, thanks. I don't recall ever seeing that before.
Truthfully, I don't either.
Yeah, so it was changed from the number of staff to number of full-time equivalents, just to paint that better picture. To Councillor Warawa's point, it looks like there's 14 staff, for example, but there's actually, 1.1 or 0.8 full-time equivalents in that station.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Any more questions for Rodney? The Corporate Service Department report? No? All right, thanks, Rodney. We'll get Emergency Service Department update, page 224.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Reeve. Council, I just maybe highlight back to Councillor Warawa's point, daytime response capacity that's highlighted in the fire emergency response section. It is a ongoing concern. We do have a roster now. In this report, it says 85 personnel. Since then, we've onboarded about 5 in the new year, so it's positive. Out of those 90 personnel, very few work in the county during the day. Very few have, accommodating schedules for our various training cycles and the calls that come in. So it's one of the risks of continuing to operate a volunteer or paid on call model. And the paid on call model, it actually should be called paid per call. It's just not the industry standard. So there is nobody paid on call within, an on call rate per se. So yeah, and I can just take any questions further to that at the end of the report. So the last report for emergency services was October 11th, same as Mr. Boyko's. So since then, we've attended a couple NR Care meetings, both November 8th, 13th, and December 15th. We also attended a senior officer meeting with Strathcona County Emergency Communications Center to give an update on our operations and some of the concerns we were having with response plan variances and just some inconsistencies. Since that meeting, we have had a really positive outcome. Dispatch has really kind of, I would say, for lack of a better term, improved, bucked up, and they've really shown us we're actually seeing pre-alerts on average 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes earlier than we were before. So that's having a really good impact on response times. We issued 42 brush pile permits from November 1st to 21st. There's maybe another 6 to 10 since the start of the season again. Overall, we've had much fewer complaints this year in terms of the number, the smoke, things being off in the distance, non-compliance. So really happy about that. And we've done a much better education campaign surrounding brush piles. So we are up to about 90 personnel in the roster, so that's really exciting. We had 4 onboarded in Bruderheim this month and 1 in Shipman. Weekday daytime response time capacity is trending downward, continues to do that. We're averaging, maybe a 2 to 3 station response to try to get as many people as we can to some of these daytime calls. We had that number there was a year to date as of December 22nd, but we ended the year with 435 responses with no real change to those numbers for shoot time and response time. So we are still maintaining an average response time of under 20 minutes across the county, which is pretty impressive for the challenges that we're facing. We have seen a high number of fires and medical first response calls over the past couple of months. The dollar loss fires, structure fires with the cold snap, very common. So that's kind of been plaguing us. And there is going to be a full kind of year-end picture and summary of our statistics for all of 2022 and how that trends. So. The fall training program was a tremendous success. 449 staff hours on regional training completed since September, and council may recall that was something that was paused from 2020 onward. So this really improving across the board. One thing that I would really like to highlight is that we ran our first ever officer command development program. I touched on this as a scheduled item on my last report, but now that's been completed, the first 5. And that program sees all the officers in the county, or all officers will in the county, complete a total of 80 hours of command training online, in person, and there's 30 command simulations that each one goes through. So it's quite an intensive program. It's been really well received, and we're seeing a real difference and improvement on the operational side. So this is continuing into 2023. We have classes planned in February and then April and May, and all officers must complete the program. It's mandatory by the end of June, essentially. The 2023 training schedule set, so we're going to be relaunching the firefighter training programs. That's our 1001 professional firefighter qualifications. They're both filled. They filled within 2 days of launching the courses. So good interest there. We're going to be using our training center for the first time ever with live fire using these programs. So really gives us that flexibility. I had a strategy meeting with Fort Sask Fire in December to discuss partnering on fire service training grants. So I think council is aware the province relaunched that grant program for fire services training. So we have been told anecdotally that the amount of money coming to us will definitely not be the same as it was previously, but we do have some really good opportunities to decrease the overall cost by using this grant. Our regional training officer group, along with Deputy Chief Kelly, are working to standardize the weekly district training. So we're actually establishing objectives within the stations every week, and that's going to help kind of maintain that efficiency across the region. And our first contractor MOU was signed for the Regional Training Center in 2023. And essentially, if that partner has intakes for a firefighter training program, they will be renting our facility. So that's a really exciting development in the training center for this year. We had some good opportunities in October. Just after my last report, we actually co-sponsored a junior firefighter challenge in all the elementary schools, and this was co-sponsored with some egg societies. So we actually got all the egg societies to sign on, and we got a grant that covered 85–90% of the costs to bring that program in. Really well received. Every school participated, and it was really fantastic to see. We did 4 occupancy and safety inspections, and we had all fire district members, or members from all fire districts, assist with the annual regional Christmas hamper delivery and distribution program. Emergency management, we had a committee meeting on November 24th, CREP meeting on December 12th, and we have a scheduled plan review with AEMA in January, actually tomorrow. So just a standard review. Not listed in the report, just a couple of other items. First, with the daytime response capacity issues that we're having, Mr. Boyko, Mr. Tarnowski, and myself met last week, and we're going to work on a potential pilot program that'll see the recruitment of some additional county employees with maybe an interest in fire, and you know, as schedules and workloads and so forth may allow, we may be able to leverage their assistance during the day because they are already here. And so that the framework and, you know, all the restrictions associated with that, obviously you don't want all 6th grader operators off their beats for a fire, but all of that needs to be worked out. But it's something we're just looking at to be a little bit more creative with solving that gap. And the last item I have is the livestock emergency response trailer. So council directed us to look at some options to, you know, essentially partner or work with another municipality to take control operation of that trailer to better use it and make sure it's stored appropriately. We had a really positive conversation with Strathcona County. They're actually quite excited about the opportunity of partnering with that and would see it potentially stored inside at Station 4, which is Josephburg. So real nice and close to our locale as well. I don't have a firm answer, unfortunately, at this point, just with Christmas holidays and you know, people off, but we're still pursuing that option. The benefit of going that route versus another municipality is they have a large egg services department, they have a large emergency services department, and they would have the staffing that's able to use it, whereas some of the other smaller municipalities run into the same issue that we're having. So that's the route, that kind of our #1 route, and if that falls through, then we have a couple other backups that we've initiated some discussions with. So unfortunately not as much movement on that as we were hoping, but it is coming.
Would they assign somebody to it?
So that would be a process to be worked out. Of course, I'm talking to the Ag Services fellow, not the emergency services guy, but it sounds like the appetite was that it would be a joint thing out of Station 4 in Josephburg that would have emergency service staff available and familiar with it as well. And of course, we can still use it ourselves and go get it and bring it and, you know, do PR events, or if we have an event that we can handle, we could go grab it. It's very easy to do that. And they have lots of apparatus there to use it. So just a surface level, no guarantee at that point, but that's kind of the route we've been looking at.
So sure, the Ag Society that donated a bunch of money in the trailer, and I would be happy if it went to that fire hall close to the county.
Yeah, that's definitely our priority. Yeah, absolutely.
4 is the one that's right on the highway there, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Scotford.
Right by the company. Yeah.
It's also very timely because they were looking at essentially doing their own thing this year, and this is a really good opportunity for both of us. So.
Really, it's for storage.
Yep. Any other questions that I can answer?
Yeah. In this last paper from that was in said the accident, it was 855 and Highway 29. That we got the fire department emergency services from from Murnum to come out.
Nope.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, yeah. That's struck.
I didn't see the Vegreville paper, but
I got that yesterday,
Are you talking about the incident that was on Sunday morning?
No,
just 29 and 855. Yeah, there was.
yeah, they said it's south of Andrew, and there was a, and there was an incident, which I guess it was critical.
Yeah, I'll look at the paper, but
Yeah, have
I
a
assure
look.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
no one from Murnum.
Yeah,
The only thing could be if there was, I believe in that call, there was an off-duty member from some other department that was there first. Like they were driving down the highway and stopped.
That's
It could have been,
possible.
that could have been the context.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it just,
We've only had, as a matter of interest, we've only had one mutual aid support from outside of the county in 2022, and that was in January 2022 for a fire on Highway 16. We haven't had anybody else assisting us this year or this last year.
okay,
I'll try to find that paper.
yeah, find out.
How far are we from getting that truck we purchased for Monday?
So unfortunately, the fire chief in Fort Sask was off, not just for holidays, but also for sickness. So I just have a scheduled conference call with him tomorrow to try to firm that up. But it is ready to rock. So
I think Mandir's pretty excited.
they are, yeah.
They know already what they're getting?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we've been very transparent. They know what the issue is. They know.
Here's a question. Listening to St. Paul is, are they going to build a training center? Because they're raising funds.
Okay.
They have that hockey against the CFCW critters or whatever. And they said that that's where the funding is raising for fire center, a training center.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically. There's one in Bonnyville already, which is actually where the idea came for this one many years ago. But it's not, I don't think any of those types of centers, we should be necessarily worried about, taking business away from any potential business away from us. In the capital region, the next closest one to our size is the city of Edmonton. There's several that have small kind of, just doing internal weekly training. It's a very small project. This one is quite large in comparison. And to have the on-site classroom, lunchroom, shower facilities, and being so close to Chipman for BA fills and so forth is a definite perk. But I could definitely reach out to and just see if they have plans and perhaps get them to come our way instead.
Just that's to their advertising, eh? Okay. That's all for me.
Okay, any more questions for Shane? No. All righty, thanks Shane. Thanks for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can get a motion to take the two reports as information, please. Aaron,
Make a motion that Lamont County Council accept director's reports as information.
okay, perfect. So that, all in favor? Everybody, committee reports, 9-1. Anybody get any?
I don't have any committee reports yet. We're off committee holidays.
Meeting,
Yeah.
I just have a comment. Lamont County Housing Foundation, we have a meeting on the 30th or something. The only comment there is the union from the foundation did settle with contract negotiations. So they have a new contract that's been settled. There won't be a strike. Willingdon Seat Cleaning Plant, we had our annual meeting the latter part of December. We are in the process of hiring a new manager for the seat cleaning plant. And I've got the auditor's report for the meeting, so I will just leave this with the administration, and you could print copies and leave it in councilors' mailboxes. And a copy for Rodney and for you, Peter.
Very good.
And that's about it for me.
Already, Dan, anything?
No, just we have a meeting with on Wednesday night with the Northeast Water Commission.
Nothing for us right now. Everybody's been off on holidays.
Yeah, our A&R care and stuff is all held up until February, so.
Yep.
And that one, they want to do one more on video. All right. Get a motion for the committee reports, please. Yeah, Danny?
That Lamont County,
No.
Nope.
It's on page 4.
9.1.
9.1, page 4. About halfway down.
yeah, that Lamont Lamont County Council accepts the committee reports as information.
Okay, thank you. So that puts us to all in favor? Carried. All right. Number 10, correspondence 10-1 RMA District 5 meeting, January 27, 2023.
So this was also provided to councillors via email. We've heard from 3. Deputy Reeve Whitus, we're waiting to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I just got it here. I'm trying to reply and it won't let me.
Okay,
So put me as a yes.
very good. And I think we'll put the Reeve as a yes, so all 5 plus 1 CAO will be 6. Page 228 is some information from the Honorable Mike Ellis, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, who's providing some clarity about a move to regional governance for victim services. The letter goes in some detail, but in essence says that they're seeking to ensure that there's some consistency and standards in terms of the delivery of victim services locally, but providing a level of governance provincially. There is then on page 231 a letter from the STIP grant people saying that they received our 5 bridge file applications. No decision as of yet. However, they have gone into the evaluation process. Page 232, a little more decisive a letter. We received a letter from Municipal Affairs indicating that we have not been successful in being approved for a municipal intern grant. Page 233 is correspondence from the Lamont County Health Center. Not the Lamont County, the Lamont Healthcare Center. They have had some challenges as it relates to alarms. We have been working with them ongoingly. Last week, we did an inspection and identified some specifics that they need to address in terms of their panels. This is important given that the infirm and others that are at the Lamont Healthcare Center. So we're working with them to try to help them to deal with that. And on page 235, you have an issue briefing from the regional fire chief. Finally, on page 236, more as information than anything else, is Fortis Alberta's 2023 distribution rates for power. And on the top of page 237, you will see a comparison between a December 2022 bill versus a January 2023 bill at the new rates. And you'll see that the changes are, well, in residential are somewhere between 1.4 and 2.3, depending on usage, percent change in terms of usage. Somewhat higher usage on high usage in farm settings, and it goes through a whole number of rate class descriptions. More of general interest to council than related to Lamont County operations, and that's all I've got.
Any questions on any of the correspondence? Oh, all right, we get a motion, please, to.
I move that Lamont County Council accept all correspondence as information.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? All right, everybody's in favor. Number 11, we don't have anything for closed session. Number 12, adjournment at 1:47.